For those of you that know, we're just waiting for the YouTube connection to get up and running before we start.
Okay, I think we're ready to go.
Okay. Because it usually gives me a message that it's being broadcast, but if you say it's running, it's running.
I am seeing that it's running and I'm seeing that it's recording.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Good evening, everyone. This is the Hideout Utah Town Council regular meeting, April 10th, 2025. This meeting is being held both electronically and in person at the Hideout Town Hall. Calling the meeting to order. I am Bill Rubin. I am the mayor. And I'm going to do roll call. So let's start with Chris Beyer.
Here.
Okay. Jonathan Gund.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. Here.
It's funny, I was talking to like.
Somebody needs to be muted. Can you get the muting done for me, please? Carol Hazelton.
Here.
Thank you. Ralph Severini.
Here.
Bob Nadelberg.
I can barely hear you. I'm assuming you called me. I'm here.
I did. Bob Nadelberg. Can you hear me now?
Barely. I'm in a really bad cell phone area.
Oh, okay. So that's you, not me. Okay. Thank you. We have the council, full council. We have a quorum. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the March 13th, 2025 Town Council meeting minutes. And going to ask council for comments or concerns or corrections in the minutes.
I don't have any.
I don't have any.
None here, other than some comments on follow-ups.
None here.
Okay. Then if everybody's comfortable with the minutes, then I would appreciate a motion to approve the minutes of the March 13th, 2025 Town Council meeting. I'll have Carol as the motion. In a second.
I'll second.
Jonathan is the second. Okay, Bob. I don't even know if you were there. Can't remember.
I vote yes.
Okay, Chris.
Yes.
Ralph.
Yes.
Carol.
Yes.
And Jonathan.
Yes.
Okay, minutes are approved. Thank you. Item 4, follow-up items. Ralph, you said you had some items you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I think there were 3 in there. One was on page 2 of 7, line 19. But I think we were going to discuss that tonight, or is that on the roadway policies?
Okay. What's the next?
I can take that one.
Is that an on and off thing or what? Since it's in big either.
Do you want me to answer that one? This is Alicia.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Jason Birmingham was going to be on tonight, but we rescheduled him to May. So we'll be discussing that in May.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
In another month. We also talked, well, actually, this was more you, Jonathan, on line 31, 29. You stressed the need to prioritize input from Hideout residents, specifically in recommending that any survey responses be clearly segmented by residency status. So as we do surveys, I think we keep note of that. And I'm not sure where you are on the survey, but we don't have to talk about that now. Okay, I think those were the 2 items because then it got into the agenda items, it's just a repeat of Jason Burton.
So Ralph, I mean, the only way to do that in our current survey system is the honor system. As far as separating in and out, I don't think we've got the ability to capture all IP addresses and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it would be difficult, but, but we have asked the question, so.
Yes, we can ask the question. That
Yeah.
we
Yeah, exactly. Not much, I mean, people are gonna lie on their surveys, they're gonna maybe, and we've had that with the early on, we had the original, annexation referendum and some things along that line, but I don't think we've seen too much of that since.
Okay. Thank
Those
you,
were
Ralph. If that's it for the follow-up items, then I'm going to jump to the agenda. And I think we have some people visiting to talk about this tonight, which item one, which is the annual 2025 Jordanelle Community Cleanup Day. So I think the keys are here to talk about that.
Yeah,
So go ahead.
sure. My name's Nikki, and I'm not sure how great my connection is. So if I get fuzzy, please interrupt me. My name's Nikki Kai. I am a local real estate agent and resident of the Jordanelle area and have been for the last lots of years. So we started the Jordanelle Cleanup Day casually probably 15 years ago. And so we kind of made it more official the last 10 years. And I'm just throwing out numbers because I keep saying 10 years, but I don't know, maybe it's 12 years now. But on May the 4th, we invite everyone who is a resident of the Jordanelle to get out and clean up our trash that emerges after all of the snow melts. And so this year will be the same as the last few years that we've done it with the city of Hideout. I will be up there at the town hall handing out bags that were generously donated by the lumber supply on the corner of the Jordanelle Parkway. They're always awesome to give us as many bags as we need. And I believe Hideout, are you guys willing to put a dump truck up there again to haul off trash for your residents?
Yeah, we'll do our usual. We'll have the containers at the Public Works building, and we'll have the trailer up at the town hall.
Perfect, perfect. So we're going to do, this is Sunday, May the 4th. It'll start at 10 a.m. I'll start handing out bags there at the city hall for the residents on the north end. So maybe some of your people that live in the Deer Mountain area. If it's closer to go to the retreat at Jordanelle Clubhouse, then there'll be, my husband will be handing out bags, and we've got some volunteers that are manning up there. And then we've got Paul Beckman, one of our residents that lives on the north end, will be driving around with his trailer. So if there's anything bigger that you don't want to pick up and put in a trash bag, he is available to cruise around with his trailer to throw in the back of that. So we personally invite everyone. We appreciate the town of Hideout support as always. And then at 12, you can throw your gloves off and head to the retreat clubhouse, and we'll have a catered lunch there. So the lunch is actually, the cleanup is great, but the lunch is my favorite part because that's when we get to chat with neighbors who all have the same common goal, which is to make our area better. And so I really, again, appreciate the volunteers and the support out of Hideout Town. And then, I appreciate the cleanup because it's always nice to look around and not see trash. But I hope to see you guys this year again. So thank you. And if you have any questions, holler.
Okay, thank you.
I do, Nikki. Hey, this
Awesome.
is Chris. Are you expecting people to sign up ahead of time?
Yes. So thank you for, I should have made that clear. In my flyer to that I sent to Alicia that I'm hoping gets sent out to your residents, there is a link to sign up on it's the website is thejordanelle.com. and there's a tab for cleanup day. And there's a couple reasons we ask you to sign up. Number one, we want to make sure that we get your waiver. So there's this signature that you sign off. But then we also need a head count for lunch. And so we would love to make sure we have enough food for everyone. So preferably you sign up online ahead of time. That's not going to be, you don't have to sign up to do it. But then if we just want to make sure there's enough food for everyone. So I'm highly recommending and it's a quick Google form. You just put your name and email address, and then I can send you information like who to call for bigger items, that sort of thing. So that's it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Hey,
Thank you, looking forward to it.
I noticed that Dan Allen came in to the meeting a little bit late. So Dan, just so you know, I volunteered you for the usual support for cleanup day on May 4th.
Is that my truck driver? My dump truck?
He's a Hideout employee.
I will have the trailer at town hall hooked up
Yeah.
to a truck, and then one of the guys will be there
Yeah.
to pick up stuff if anybody leaves it sitting on the side of the road.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Thank
Sorry,
you.
I'm out of breath.
Okay. Any other questions on the cleanup day? Okay. Item 2, quarterly review of the fiscal 25 budget.
Phil, I'll be taking that.
Thanks.
Okay. We're doing very well this year to budget. You can see that we're unfavorable in operating income of $269,000. I will call out that that's really good news, only for the reason that you've got good news in the MITA fund and the Class C road fund that offsets over 360,000 in those two funds. So we're showing unfavorability in the general fund, but you have the offsetting favorability in
I'm sorry to
the,
interrupt. Sorry, Katie. I can't see is there a document that you're sharing, or are you just talking? I wasn't
I
sure.
thought I was sharing the screen. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I just see the agenda.
Yeah, I think you're sharing the screen, just not the pages. So just scroll down.
I'm seeing it on my screen.
I can share my screen. I was looking off of my screen with all the detail. It's up to you.
I clicked to the agenda page. I thought on page 13 but you're not seeing it, Alicia? That means,
No, we're just seeing the agenda. I can see your cursor.
well, let me stop the share and try sharing again. There's something going on.
Okay.
What are you seeing now?
It's perfect.
Yep.
Okay, I'll start over again. You can see we're flat to budget, but in actuality, we're doing very well to budget. You can see that we're unfavorable in operating income by about $269,000. The good news there is that there is an offsetting 350,000 favorability in the MITA fund and the Class C road funds. So what we have here is we didn't need any money to be transferred from the other funds into the general fund because we're doing very well as it relates to our operating expenses. We're showing about $269,000 favorable on operating expenses, and those are associated with lower salaries and benefits due to us not hiring a new public works employee or an engineer, as well as lower consulting advisory costs and fewer street maintenance and repairs. The favorability is partially offset by a loan repayment of an asset written off last year, as well as not hiring the internal engineer. We have higher external engineering costs. But you can see that we're trying to balance our budget to zero, and we do not need any money from the MITA fund, municipal fund, to fund any of our operating expenses that we thought we might have to use, nor do we have to use some valuable Class C road funds for street repairs that we can keep in those respective funds and use in subsequent years. So it's very good news that we've been able to control our expenses and have really good control of our operating costs. So it's good news overall.
Okay. Questions Sorry, Katie.
No, go ahead. I was just going to move to the enterprise fund, but if anyone has any questions on the general fund, go ahead.
Hey, Katie, it's Ralph.
Yes.
So so the actual, was $3,233. The budget was 365 on the contributions and transfers. What are between MIDA and Class C, which is, you said is the bulk of that number, how do they break down percentage wise?
The contribution to Class C, we were going to take 150,000, and MIDA, we were going to take 215,000 in our budget. And so we were going to have to take a combined $365,000 because of some operating costs that we had put in our budget. And the good news is now we only need 3,200 of that. So that is the predominance. You could see 360,000 unfavorable there due to 150,000 being in Class C and 215 in MIDA. So we've got some really good favorability in other areas such as interest revenue, as well as we're doing very well on our building permits because we're anticipating at least an additional 20 building permits over what we had in the budget. So you can see we're doing very well in the other areas.
So, two things then, Katie, if you can help me on this. If we trend out with, on a 150 basis from year to year or less 215 on the MIDA, will that impact next year? How do you see this? Any read for the future, I would ask. And
No, it's really quite favorable because last year we spent a lot of road repairs and maintenance. So we took about 200,000 from the Class C road funds. We only used about 87,000 this year for asphalt repair, but we were able to cover that with other savings. So that actually is money now that we can keep in MIDA and Class C road funds, such that if we have a major repair of the streets, we then can take additional money. Then we try and budget about 150,000 we take from the Class C road funds. If next year we ended up with $300,000 again, like we did last year, we could pull 300,000 because we didn't spend the 150 this year. We can also keep accumulating those for road replacement and other expenses that we might incur in the future for roads. Same with the MIDA. What we do is we just keep those in the MIDA funds, and we have the opportunity to use some of those MIDA funds for development. So for advisory and consulting for the growth of the town, or we can use them for municipal expense shortfalls, and we can take some from the MIDA municipal. We have two funds that we could take from MIDA, development and municipal. This year I had said I'd take from the municipal because we had a lot of additional municipal expenses, but I can also switch those to be development if we ended up spending a lot more on advisory, because I can use development expense or development funds from MIDA for advisory and growth, whereas I can use municipal funds from MIDA for general maintenance for the town. And those MIDA funds come from the homes in the MIDA area. Their property taxes go to the MIDA municipal and development funds.
Thanks, Katie. It would be great to know if we could, and maybe you could share with us, your view on what we could take from some of those funds. And you said it sounded like we could use it for, maybe some development, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be useful to know, and what that, where that bank account would wind up based upon current trajectories in the next year. And then, so that finishes my question there. On the license and permits, what's the trajectory? You said it was up 20, so are we now near 100?
Actually, we're hoping to get about 125. We've got a lot of strong expectations for April, May, and June, and we're over 80 on a quarterly through the March. So we're expecting we could hit 50 in April, May, and June is the expectations. I kind of couched it to be to 120, but we could get up to 125. Now, with everything that's going on with tariffs and everything else, who knows if people are going to be a little more skittish. But we did have some conversations with developers. We're very optimistic of a strong spring.
No, that's great considering, the volatility in the markets right now. So,
Agreed.
yeah. Okay, sorry. Those were the questions I had for part A here.
No, great questions. And it's really nice, Ralph, that you did ask that question, because on the advisory and consulting, if we do have a lot of opportunity to grow the town, we can use the MIDA development funds. And we do have a lot in the MIDA development and in the MIDA municipal that we're getting some really good interest, because we are having those in high interest bearing accounts. So we are utilizing those funds to make money from an interest perspective, with the hope next year that we should be able to use them for to help develop further the town.
Thanks. And Mighty comes up later. So, okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Katie, this is Chris. I see you said we still have over 100,000 left in the budget for streets. Is that right? Is that what I'm reading?
Yep. If I can go over to streets, we have quite a bit in the streets. Let me just see what we're expecting for the remainder of the year. We do have some good street expense that we are potentially going to spend over the next 2.5 months. We've spent about 162,000 through March. We've had some discussions with Dan, and he doesn't expect anything major over the next 2.5 months from a road perspective. If something does come up, I think we can cover it with other operational savings. But again, we can also use some funds from the Class C road funds. But right now, we've spent about 163,000. We have about 40,000 in the forecast.
So Dan, are you on, Dan? Daniel?
Dan's on, but go ahead and ask your question, Chris.
My question is, what are the street projects that we're going to be expecting, throughout the rest of the fiscal year, which is the 2.5 months?
We've got some additional work now that the snow is gone on the speed control activities.
There's a few things for what the mayor just said, speed control stuff and pothole patching, buying equipment to actually do some of the pothole patching ourselves instead of having somebody else do it for us, which will save us some money in the long run. Not huge things. I just want to make sure I have something.
Daniel, does that
What's
include like striping and things like that? When you're talking about streets, it's also that.
The stripe, we're gonna be putting in, we're not gonna be restriping until we do the paving work, which we do in the fall or the first or second quarter of the next fiscal year. But we will be doing some paint work, speed control oriented paint work, hopefully before the end of this fiscal year.
You have paving like planned in the next fiscal year?
Yeah, we do every year, every single year.
Okay.
We do crack seal, we do certain portions of the road that need patching, and we do some striping depending on where it is.
All right, I'm asking these questions, well, I have an agenda, of course, it has to do with the post committee, which we'll get to later, but just, I wanna make sure that we are keeping up with our road repairs and, the traffic calming measures and other things that we've talked about, signage, whatever, all those things that keep coming up. And it looks like we have money for that, to be working on that in the next 2.5 months. And then, of course, we'll be budgeting as we go for next year.
Yes, Chris, that's why we spent the 300,000 last year. We did a lot of slurry sealing, the crack sealing, the asphalt and everything. This year, we only did the 87,000 of asphalt because we did all the work last year. Next year, if we need to do more, that would be well into our budget. And that's what we've started the budget process in at this point in time. But of the 162,000 we've spent year to date, we spent about 90,000 on the asphalt. So you can see we've spent 70,000 on other street repairs and maintenance, as well as, obviously for maintenance of our autos and fuel for the snow trucks.
Okay, I don't have that kind of detail in here. I just have the buckets. So when you say, as you can see, I can't see, but I'll take your word for it. That's
Yeah, I think yesterday, I think Jan distributed the complete detail as well, so you can see that in
Yeah,
your files later on. But yes, I'll be happy to answer any questions after the meeting if you have any.
okay, thanks.
all right, let's go to enterprise.
Okay. The enterprise fund is looking exceptionally great at this point in
Sorry,
time.
Katie, sorry, just, can somebody confirm that the page switched when I switched it?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. Go ahead,
We
sorry.
have we have some nice favorability in the revenue because we have higher building permits than we thought we were going to have. Obviously, we're going to have higher water services revenue. So we're quite favorable because of that. And then in the expenses, we are very favorable as it relates to salaries and benefits because salaries and benefits, about 75% of the engineer and the public works comes out of the water fund. And since we're not hiring those two people, you've got some significant favorability there. That unfavorability is obviously offset by higher engineering costs in the professional line. You see some favorability in the professional line outside of the, I'm sorry, it's not the professional line, it is the general water expense. We have $80,000 unfavorable, offsetting some of that salary favorability because of external engineers that we are hiring instead of doing it internally. Offsetting some of that favorability is some good news from JSSD Water and Sewer, as they did not increase their rates this year. So overall, our expenses are very favorable. So net, we're about 323,000 favorable to the year for the water fund.
Okay. Questions for Katie? Thank you,
no,
Katie.
I have the same kind of question about water, about maintenance, like I did about roads. I mean, it looks like we've got plenty of money to continue water maintenance, except that the general water service expense is the external people we hire. I mean, what are our plans for the next 2.5 months?
Actually, it's very interesting, Chris, that you asked that too, because we do have a lot in the forecast, and Dan's working with Hal, the engineers, to determine we've got money in the forecast for some potential cameras to go into the sewer lines. So I do still have a significant amount in the forecast. So we've only spent about 117,000 through March, and I've got another 90,000 in the forecast for some of that work that we're looking at with the engineers.
So, Chris, just for clarity, water service is water and sewer. It's just listed in our sheet here as water, but it's not exclusively water, it's water and sewer. And so, we're using the funds on both the inbound side and the outbound side. If funds exist, we're still converting some of the meters. We just haven't got everything switched over yet, I don't think, to the new automated reading meters that we're working on. Dan can confirm that or not. So there's some other things we can do in the balance of the fiscal year that would make sense to use the funds for.
We are using a significant amount. Hopefully we can get the RFP out and get it put out for the echoing of our sewer system so we can start mapping it out. And I know what needs to be fixed and what doesn't, because it's never been done. So we know what deficiencies we have and what we don't have. We spent a significant amount of money on meters, for smart meters, to change out all the apartments over at Todd Hollow because they weren't reading correctly. And we noticed a significant difference between our meters and JSSD's meters. So that was my first big money spend on that. And once I see what I've got left, then we can buy more meters to go throughout town. But that was a big water usage that we weren't getting correct. So I went to that route first. And when I have a better look on what I've got left for meters and whatnot, then I'll buy more before the end of the year so that we can continue to change out for everybody in town to have a smart meter.
What percentage are we, as far as changing out those smart meters? Because I'm just wondering at what point we're going to get to a accurate understanding of usage.
Well, the ones over at Todd Hollow weren't reading correctly at all, period. But having a smart meter, the advantage is, one, it shows us, we can track the usage for each home, and it'll show us if they had a leak. It shows if you got up in the middle of the night and took a drink of water. It literally will track it and show everything. So if a homeowner has a high water bill, they can go back in and track it themselves and say, oh, I can see on this day it started leaking, and this is how much we started using, and then it got worse and progressively got worse. Just for an instance, we had somebody that left town, their water meter broke, it was running down towards their house and went into their basement. Well, if they would have had a smart meter, it would have shown them that they had a leak, and they would have been able to detect it before anything happened. Well, before anything got really bad. So it's a huge advantage to the residents and us to have smart meters. They're accurate, they're new, and they work with our system to where we read and how we read. So the whole concept of those meters is something that is a great thing for the town, because it saves a lot of money in reading, saves money for residents, and it gets us an accurate read to be able to look at the master meters from JSSD and say, okay, JSSD says we're using 100,000 gallons in this section of town, and we're seeing that we're using 999,000 gallons, or we are 500,000 gallons off. But we need those things now. And that's why I'm trying to budget it out so we can get it, and we have better reads, we have better data, so we aren't just hoping we're paying for the right thing.
So how many smart meters are installed versus how many are left to install?
I wish I had that right off the top of my head. We were hoping to do 100 a year. I think we have, now that we did Todd Hollow, I think we're down to a couple hundred, so I can get them done pretty quick.
So Chris, I think it's important to understand that the meters that we have, the guys have done a ton of work on every individual meter. The meters that we have are accurate to the gallon, but they have to be read manually. The smart meters talk to us. So so the guys go around once a month and scan and pick up the meter reading, but you could run an entire 30 days from the last time they read it, and have a leak and not know it. The smart meters will, capture that information right away. We get a signal right away that there's a step change in the water consumption, and the guys can go out and investigate. So that's the advantage of the smart meter. I don't want anybody thinking that the non-smart meters are wrong. They measure, they just have to be read manually.
Okay, so you have details of every consumer.
Yes.
Meter, because that's
Yes.
not how our bills are. Our bills are they don't give us an exact meter reading. All right, so, but the town has that information. You
Yeah.
may have to go property to property to go read it if you were to collect that data. Until
Well,
you.
We are collecting that data every month, but again, the bill is, the billing on water, although I'm still working to get that reviewed, but the billing on water is, on a volume is a base rate. So if you use less than 10,000 gallons, you're paying the same rate. So your water bill, utility bill doesn't show that, but we know what each house is using. If you're using 200 gallons versus 10,000, we know that.
Great, thank you.
So yeah, to piggyback off that, the mayor's correct. Our meters are reading correctly. The smart meters, again, just to reiterate, they give us an accurate count of every home, exactly what's going on. We don't have to guess when the leak started or anything like that. We know because it's on their record, if that makes sense.
Well, we spent a lot of time on trying to calculate what our water consumption is. So how does this factor, guys, into the understanding of where the trajectory is on our water usage and the calculations that we've done and that we'll continue to do? Does this insert any potential errors in there, or is it potential kind of gaps, so to speak? How would you read this?
Ralph, I mean, it's an instantaneous data point at a time when water is used as opposed to a monthly number. So the net is the same. We just get it with the smart meters. We get the information and the variance information in between the manual readings. So the net on a monthly basis shouldn't be any different. It's only that it gives us a tool to help with water loss.
Using this in our calculations, or are we just using JSSD numbers?
We've been tracking every unit since we converted to the including the manual meters. We converted last May. So we're tracking it all, Ralph. We're not just using JSSD. What we're doing is using our meter readings, comparing them to JSSD, figuring out, as Dan said, where some of the gaps are on which portion of the water system, and then we're going in digging into what's going on with if there's a significant difference on the volumes. That's why we went in there and did what we did at the Deer Mountain Affordable Community.
We have accurate readings. It's just for the manual ones, it's only once a month instead of
Right.
instantaneous.
Yeah, so I think where do we stand? I know this isn't I mean, we can bring it up later.
Ralph,
Where
we agreed that we needed to get a year's worth of data to make sure that we understood what everything was going on, and that'll be happening at the end of May. Okay. And at that point, we'll sit down and see where we are, and hopefully, because that happens in May and our budget isn't approved till end of June, can look at that and see what else we need to build into the budget for following year to attempt to identify what else if there are gaps between the inbound master meters and our individual use meters, we can figure out what needs to be done.
And I know that you guys have a lot going on tonight and a big go, but just so you know, we as a town are under what the state wants us to be for lost water, what we don't know where we don't know where that water's going. They want us to be at 10% or lower. We're at 9.5%. With what we're doing at Todd Hollow, that'll bring us down even more. And then with what we've been doing and going through with all these meters and changing the reads and figuring it out and digging down and drilling down more on all of this, we've been able to say, okay, these are the areas we need to go to next, that some of the meters are a little old. They're slowing down. We need this, we need that. We've really made some progress, and I'm hoping that we'll be down into 9% or less of lost water, which I'm going to tell you is phenomenal across the state. So just know that the town itself, we're doing really well, but we're going to get even better. To toot our own horns as Public Works, we're doing a really good job at making sure that the town isn't paying for water and we don't know where it's going. It's getting better, and we're in the top percentages of the state, because there's a lot of them that have a lot higher than 10% lost water.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Appreciate that update,
Okay, so this kind of got off track from the budget, but anything else on the through third quarter of this fiscal year before we move on to the next topic?
No, I was just going to show you that in the MIDA fund, you have it on the
Sorry.
next page. It's all right, that you can see the exact offset there where it says transfer to general fund. You can see that 3233 and worth 211,000 favorable. If I had given you the Class C road funds, you would have seen the $150,000 favorable there. So net, it's a zero impact and good news overall.
Okay. So, our MITRE fund is growing nicely. It's getting to be a reasonable chunk of money, which is fantastic. And so we're getting to the point where we have enough funds in the MITRE fund to start to think about, as Katie mentioned, how we want to use that in development activities. Create.
That's because I can tell you there was some time after we agreed to have certain subdivisions in the project area that I definitely had some misgivings. But I'm really glad to see us finally having that surplus as a result and then being able to put it to good use.
Yes, and we expect better news next year for MIDA too, because we continue to grow the MIDA area significantly.
Okay.
Okay, so you also have me for the next topic. I think what you have in front of you is the original. What I want to talk about now is the potential for the Public Works Department to terminate the lease for 2 of the town's 6 lease trucks and purchase 2 new trucks. So instead of leasing all 6 trucks, we want to purchase 2 and give back 2 of the leased vehicles. So you've got the original contract in front of you that's being displayed, I believe.
No, I moved it.
Okay.
We don't need
Okay,
to be
now
looking
you're-
at the contract. I mean, that's
Okay,
not.
I agree. So now what you have in front of you is you've got, I put together some brief pros, benefits to purchasing versus the risks and the cons.
So
The Public Works.
Katie, I'm gonna interrupt for a second. I'm gonna put some background in for the benefit of the council before you go through the detail here, okay?
Yep.
Sorry. So several years ago, the town engineer made a recommendation to look at lease versus buy. We did some math on that and it looked attractive initially. As we worked through several years now of leasing, we're finding that where we get dinged heavily is in the return process. All right, our trucks do take a beating. No, it's nothing to do with the guy's driving skills. It has to do with the fact that we put plows on them. We put we put extra things on those trucks to make them available to plow, light bars and so forth. And then some of our roads, as all of you know, are narrow and steep. And when it's snowing like crazy and it's icy, the guys do slide from time to time and hit a curb or that kind of thing. And it's nothing to do with their driving skill. It has to do with the fact that it's a tough place to do the work. And so at the end of their term, we're putting them back in and we're finding we're putting 20, 30,000 more dollars into the trucks. Most of those incidents are cosmetic, but because of the leasing requirements, you basically got to bring them back looking like new. We also put a bunch of equipment in the truck. The guys have tools and so forth. And so net, after a couple of years of the leasing process, we've identified that we're coming out behind through leasing and not ahead. And so if Dan and I and engineering have talked about this and said, we a couple things. Additionally, the trucks that we've been getting, depending on the year, aren't necessarily ideal for our location. We've got some pretty tight curbs. And so we've been getting, king cabs, if you will. And that makes the wheelbase longer and it makes it much harder for the guys to go around the roundabout, for example, with the truck. And so they've got to back up and make multiple passes. So we don't have, for the leasing process, we're not getting the ideal truck. We're incurring costs on return. And so in hindsight, we made a bad decision. And so our recommendation is it's time to get out of the leasing business and put some trucks, in our ownership side. And that way we can run them longer. We don't have to change the light bars every year. We don't have to change the plow attachments every year because we have to turn the truck back in at the end of lease kind of thing. And my guess is we'll get 5 to 7 years out of these trucks, and then we can sell them as used trucks at the end and get some revenue from that as well. So that's why we're bringing this to you for review tonight. And with that, I'll let Katie talk about the actual math.
And this page that's being displayed in the pros and cons, the mayor did an excellent job. You can see exactly what he says. It's on the pros side. I'll call out the con side. He's already referenced it. But when we do turn in these 2 trucks, they will have to repair those 2 trucks. Now, if we kept them the full 5 years, we would have bought them, or that we can buy them for $1 at the end of the 5 years. So we would have just kept them, as the mayor said, we might keep them 5 to 7 years. The lease is for 5 years. So we'd either keep them or trade them in or sell them as is. So we will incur some expense to repair the trucks because there is some damage. And there's also a caveat in the lease that basically says when you do turn them in, if you turn them in early, they will sell them. And depending on how much we still owe on the lease and owe as it relates to the original cost, we'll have to pay if they get less than that, or we get the benefit if they get more. We have asked the leasing company for an estimate 2 weeks ago. They did give us something about 2 hours ago. And we need to go back and ask some questions on it because they're saying that we still owe about 70 to 75,000 on each of them, and they're only able to sell them for 51,000 at the most. And my comment back, we haven't talked officially to them. My comment back to them is I still owe 77,000 on the lease, and you're telling me now if I buy them outright, they're only worth 51. So I would buy them out and sell and use them to the best of our ability, as well as potentially then buy this extra 1 or 2 of the extra new vehicles. So because of the cost they're telling us, we would lose about 20 to 22,000 on each of them. But if you go to the next page, you can see the financials. By doing the trade-in, we are up about 44,000. So I guess the mayor at this point in time, what I'm basically saying is I don't know what that loss is going to be because we have to pay for the repair. And then they're also saying we might only get 51,000. Their email back to us was not clear. So there could be a $22,000 to $24,000 loss on each of the trucks. But you can see by switching them out, we're going to save 44,000. Because when you look at this page, you can see that when I look, the Ram trucks are the ones that are leased. And the total value of those was 179,000, with 24,000 of that being an interest, and the actual truck cost is 154. But as the mayor said, we don't need these king cabs and these big cabs that are too big for our roads. So you can see some of the savings is because we don't need that big of a truck. We'd like just a 2-door truck with a bed, and you can see the truck cost is significantly less. So I did put in lost interest to kind of say if we did outlay the cash now to buy it, we would lose interest on that cash over the next 3 years. So the total purchase would be 135,000, but obviously 17 of that is just lost opportunity interest. So we'd like approval to be able to move forward unless the cost to trade in and return is more than the 45,000 we could save. Then I guess we'd have to come back to you, Mayor, and ask some additional questions.
Well, I can, if you're done, I can tell you the existing trucks, I mean, living on a cul-de-sac, they can't plow where I'm at. I have to get out there with a snow blower and fix it. I mean, seriously fix it. Like 3-4 feet away from the curb, because they just cannot make the turn on these extra long bed trucks. I think it's necessary, and I'm sure that there are other problems, but I just know that that's my firsthand experience. And I know that the fleet that we have doesn't meet the needs that we have. So I'm definitely in favor of trading out those long bed trucks and and starting to make that transition, with this purchase program. Plus, I think in the long run, it makes sense, that trucks do hold their value better than a lot of other vehicles when you want to go and sell them. And so I think in the long run, I don't know if you're factoring that in, Katie, but
Yeah,
when we're
we,
the truck
we,
selling.
we
this truck,
definitely-
Go ahead.
no, we definitely are. And that's what, one of my major comments back to this leasing company with the value of they want to give to us, or they think they can get at 51,000. These trucks are great trucks. And I would even consider buying one for 50,000. They're worth 80,000 and we've only had them for a year. So yeah, I 100% agree. And you're right to your comment. The smaller trucks are easier to maneuver. They're safer for snow plowing. There's less snow plowing damage and they're sturdier. And our goal would be to buy two now, return two of the leases, and in 2 years from now, or every other year or every year, try and switch them out between the lease and the buy. And then we'd own our own fleet. And then we could sell them at the end and the residual value would be much higher than we would get from the leasing company.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm thinking too. So
And
I'm all for it.
just to give you kind of a little synopsis real quick, and then I'm going to be quiet because I talk too much. But the trucks that we have right now, with the 4 doors and a long bed, I still have to have a long bed for my salters, but those trucks that we have are 22 feet from bumper to bumper without my plow and salter. With my plow and salter, they are 27 to almost 28 feet. There's roads in Rustler that are 18 feet to 24 feet. My trucks can't even back up without hitting somebody's front yard and tearing something up there or backing into a rock wall. So that's why these trucks are really difficult. And Chris gave a perfect example of her circle with that thing in the middle. It is almost impossible for us to plow that circle with these long trucks. We do our best, but our best is crappy at best. I plow it. So I know I take pride in my work and I do my best to plow Chris's circle and the one up in Rustler. But I can tell you, when I leave there, I'm not happy with it because I just can't do any better unless I was out there with the snow shovel shoveling it by hand. So the trucks that we would buy on our own, we would have different beds on them that are stronger, more sturdy. It just makes it a lot better all around. The damage would be less, everything would be less with these smaller trucks that we choose that work for us as a town, not what they say, oh, I'm going to give you. I asked for 3,500 trucks, which is a 1-ton truck. They gave me one truck that doesn't even meet that. And I had to, now I couldn't even put enough salt in it to finish like the other trucks because it wouldn't hold enough weight. So they just give me whatever they want, even though I ask for certain things. We're kind of at their mercy. So there's my plug. Thanks for listening, council. I appreciate all you guys do for us. Thank you.
And we will try and get the most that we can because one of the trucks has 3,900 miles, the other one has 5,200. So we certainly have not used them. Obviously, we've used them for heavy lifting, but we have not used them from a mileage perspective very much. So we'll do the best job we can to be able to get the best deal we can to turn them in.
Well, I'll add my 2 cents. That sounds like the right approach. Move quickly. Don't waste any more time. If we made, a slight error here, move off that. By the way, are there any tariffs on these trucks? It looks like they're.
Hey, all cars are made cross borders, right? Parts shipped back and forth, so I feel like you should buy them now.
But these are, what percentage? I'm guessing this is Ram, so it's mostly US,
Mexico, parts come from Mexico.
I think,
Yeah, that's true.
I think we're in, as Ralph would say, violent agreement here, so perhaps
Okay.
it's time to.
Yeah, let's just.
Move quickly.
do it.
All right, so what I need is,
I'd say it'd be a good idea.
so what I need then is a motion to authorize the mayor to enter into the purchase agreement for the public works vehicles not to exceed $150,000.
So moved.
I'll second.
Jonathan second, okay. Ralph,
Yes.
support that. Bob, maybe he's in a bad reception area, so. Carol,
Yes.
thank you. Jonathan
Yes,
and Chris.
Yes,
Okay. I'll put, Bob, can you hear us? Is he still there? I'm not looking at the attendee
he's
list.
there. He appears to be on mute.
Okay. So,
Oh, no, wait, he's off mute. No, he's on mute.
no, he's on mute, at least it's showing him mute on my phone. Anyway, but we have the votes to pass, so motion carries. So. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to item 4. At the last meeting, we talked with the fire district was on, and we talked a lot about wildfire risk. We did mention that, we are in a wildland urban interface and there are risks here, and Jonathan has been our connection to the fire district and has been working on things we can do to get better. And so I'm going to turn it over to him. Jonathan, I don't know if you have slides or you're just going to talk it, but you have the ability to present. I can stop sharing if you're going to present.
no problem. So this committee, we propose to be co-chaired by Ralph and myself. And the reason for that is it has 2 separate prongs. Prong A is trying to get the permanent fire station up and running. And at the moment, we're working with UDOT in order to get our existing access to 248 expanded sufficiently for the fire department operations. And so, we're working with UDOT, it's in process. That activity is beginning to wind down once we get past UDOT. But what is ramping up is the other part of that, which is wildfire risk mitigation. And that's where Ralph has special expertise in the insurance industry in this area. And he's been spearheading some really impressive stuff. So I'll turn it over to Ralph for his piece of this committee.
Yeah, I think we've had now an open house, kind of an open house for the HOA, for a few HOAs. We had presentations by Eric and Troy, and Clint at the last town council meeting. And we're, part of this is, to create a fire-wise community, an intelligent community that's knowledgeable about, risk and risk mitigation, and get people educated to a large extent. And so far, Jonathan didn't mention, but we're gonna have a committee that is multifaceted. So developer, HOA, there's one resident who volunteered, she hasn't, I have to reconnect with her. So a mixture of folks that are, subject to the issues and problems of the town at this point. And then really try to develop a series of educational programs along with filing for a Firewise community, which there's an application for, there's no cost. And we would be working with, again, the 3 gentlemen that we've been working with closely to get this off the ground. The other thing that we did, which back more on the insurance side and how this financially impacts towns, is organized a call with our state insurance commissioner, Jonathan Pike, and his head of property and casualty, Reed. And they were and actually Eric Kells was on the call. They were really impressed with what we're doing here in Hideout, as working with Eric and team at the fire level, but our knowledge of, call it, the risk factors that are connected to things like financial risk mitigation. And in this case, by the way, does everyone know that House Bill 48 was signed into law by Governor Cox about 10 days ago? Anybody familiar with that? So I'll give a rundown. Grace is giving me a nod over here. Maybe she knows. So House Bill 48 now requires that any underwriter or insurer that's gonna underwrite property in the state must at least minimally look at the Department of Forestry analytics in their rating, pricing, acceptance, or rejection of risk. So, however, most carriers don't necessarily use one analytical tool in their underwriting. Typically, they'll look at 2 or 3 kinds of analytical reports. But the state is requiring this. So one of the things that John Pike is doing, there's actually a delay until January 1 to go into effect because the state does not know how to verify whether an underwriter actually uses this information. So that's a bit of a headwind, but they expect to accomplish that. The big thing that we want to do is create a multi-town workshop that would last, go for 3-4 hours. John and Reed have already agreed to participate and present. We have agreements from 2 analytical companies, a broker, an insurance broker. So it would be a mixed bag. We'd have a carrier come in. We'd have Eric and team present. We would invite cross county because wildfires have no boundary. So we would make this, we invite Summit Park City. We would invite Midway and Heber. We probably have to do this. We're looking at June. We've all talked about the possible date. We would have a workshop symposium, something like that. We may have to do it in 2 parts, don't know, because there's a lot to cover here. And so far we've invited, all the invited guests from these companies, as well as our insurance commissioner, all want to participate. Our fire department and our Wasatch Fire Department said, hey, they had no problem with other fire departments like in Summit participating. So it'd be a really interesting workshop summit. And then we'll have an open house sometime maybe in May or June. We haven't come up with the exact date, but we've got some ideas on the calendar. So that's the big picture, how it affects us, where we might go, and how we can share information. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Ralph. So just wanted council to hear about what Jonathan and Ralph are working on and see if the council was supportive of them spending this time on this particular activity for the benefit of the community. In which case we'll make it an official committee like the committee updates down below. We'll add another line to the committee updates down below and have the fire committee be presenting monthly an update of their activities. So this is not doesn't require a formal vote, but I would like to hear from the other council members on their interest and value for moving this thing forward.
So Mayor, I'll start. I'm delighted. I'm glad that we're doing this finally. So in my line of work, I manage demand that comes into technology teams, right? And we've been doing this work, but it's been kind of, when I say we, the town, Ralph and Jonathan have been already working on this. I mean, we had a fire station fundraiser. There was, we had the fire district in here last month to talk about, to scare us with a video about fire coming up a hill and burning house. And then we had, Ralph and Jonathan who already, started these HOA meetings. So this is what we would call shadow backlog we're in my line of business. So I'm happy to get this out in the open so that we now can have these monthly updates on what's going on in the fire station. What your plans are, sounds great. Like your ideas are fantastic to get this thing moving and try to help the community become more wildfire knowledgeable and to be able to take steps on their property or in their HOA to be able to reduce or at least better understand their risks. So I'm delighted we're doing this and I'm looking forward to next month's update to hear what you guys have done. But my question to you is your plan to form a larger committee than just yourselves? You mentioned a couple of people, but are you gonna make it formal? Like, what's your plan, on how to conduct the committee?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be, we'd like to get an HOA participant. I think we have one. We have another resident that I was talking to. We've had some people already come forward and say, this sounds like a great idea. Would love to participate. We might have too many. So we'll have to figure this out. There's, nothing bad with that. However, we'll have to figure this out.
Okay,
So,
yeah, and understandable. That's how committees are. Post committee, we've been around for a long time, but it's only really, I guess, in the last year and a half, Kathleen got us on the straight and narrow that we're really delivering. It
Yeah.
takes a while. Well, it's hard to get a committee moving, but it sounds like you guys, you have work you've already done and you've got a vision.
there's so much publicity about this. It's a hot topic, so to speak. So, number one issue in Park City, the governor just wrote into law that just last, 10 days ago, House Bill 48, that obviously there's serious concerns about getting property insurance in the state. They wouldn't have written that into law. And we're not the only ones. So I presented at a conference in Chicago. I just came back literally, and I talked to 3 insurance commissioners there. The insurance commissioner from Illinois, Maryland, and what was the other one? But they, it's such a huge, the climate risk is such a huge topic.
Totally.
And every state I know that I've talked to is struggling right now with something, whether it's flood, whether it's hurricane, whether it's wind and hail in the Midwest and climate, the 100-year storm is turning into 10-year storms. And so given all that, there's been a huge capacity decrease in the industry. And the expectations right now from all the folks I talked, these are all state insurance commissioners, they really feel that, prices are gonna go up and there's gonna be difficulty getting coverage. So it affects everybody, whether you're a single family home like you, Chris, or you're an HOA or you're a commercial building in Salt Lake. It really has no boundaries here. So anyway, if we can be a model and get ahead of the game, I think we'll be doing our town and, everyone here a service. I think we're enough ahead of the game, and I'll stop here, but I think we can help some other communities that join us and John Pike was definitely all for that.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Can I ask?
No loss here.
In your next report out next month, can you let us know where we're at fire station fundraising? I have donors who've asked me, where are we? Do you need any more money? Where are you in terms, we'd like to know where we are, and that's not been easily, I haven't been able to answer that.
I will get that information and present it.
Fantastic.
Hey, thank you.
I have a comment I'd like to make.
Yeah, I was going to ask Carol for your input, so thank you.
Right. I actually have 2 comments. There's going to be 2 speakers at the Santee Auditorium this summer. One of them is going to be in late June. I do not have a date. It is Brad Washaw from the Utah Prescribed Fire Council. He was very active in the Parley's fire. And he is going to be speaking at the Santee Auditorium in late June about wildfire mitigation. And then the One Book, One Community book for Park City Summit County is called Fire Weather. It is a true story from a hotter world. The author is John Villant, and he is writing about all types of fire mitigation. In particular, he focused on the fire in Alberta, Canada in 2016 that took out an entire town of 100,000 people called Fort McMurray. The book is available at the Summit County Library, also the Camas Library. They have 30 copies of the book. And he will be speaking on July 29th at the Sandy Auditorium. So 2 fire experts that are going to be talking about what people can do in their communities to mitigate wildfires. So I will get this information out to Carol, blank, anyhow, Carol for the newsletter. And
Hazelton. Sorry, I'm screwing that up. That's you. I'm sorry, Carol.
I'm sorry, anyhow, so I will get that out so it can go in a news.
Custerly.
Right, and that they can get the book. But anyhow, I did hear Brad Washaw yesterday speak. Fantastic information. He has all kinds of slides of the Parley's fire and what happened and things that we can do. So
Well, that area is severe risk, Carol. So can you just pop me their emails if you know them, and I'll follow up, because I know I was just at it, like I said, I was just presenting at a conference. Another presenter was an author, and he gave his book away to everybody there. So hey.
Great.
So another way to get a book, so to speak, Carol, send me their names. I'd be glad to add them to the list of possible speakers for one of the conferences.
Well,
Thanks.
the book costs $32.50. It's not out in paperback, it's hardback. This is the fire weather book. But as I said, the library has 30 copies of it. So because it is going to be the one book, one community. And I don't have a Hotmail or a email for John Vallant. I can probably get hold of Brad Washaw's email.
Send me their names and spelling. I'll figure it out.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Carol. So it sounds like
Sorry,
I'm sorry. Somebody else trying to make a comment.
that was me, but you can go ahead.
I was just going to say, sounds like we've got good support for this. All of our committees have a goal statement, and I would hope that you guys will put something together for this fire committee and bring it back to council for blessing.
I think we already did that, Mayor. So was that part of the record here?
I haven't heard a council discussion approving that, and you weren't presenting it tonight, so I'm asking either if you'd bring that forward tonight, or because you can't have that discussion by email, so we'll need to have that in a group.
Maybe you could just talk about it next time, just your mission statement, and then we'll just get that on the website after that.
I can read it if you want, or if we want to move on, we're just.
You can present it if you want to put it up so people can see it. It's a lot easier to look at it than it is just to hear it. Sorry.
Why don't you just bring it next month? If
Yeah, that's
your
fine.
committee updates, just bring it.
I mean, you got all the gist of the
Yeah,
verbal. It's
exactly.
fine. Yeah, that's fine. Move on.
Okay. I appreciate that, guys. Thanks very much. I am going to switch the order of the next 2 topics and ask that we talk about the general filing deadlines and procedures for the 2025 municipal election, so everybody has the dates in their head before we start talking about ranked choice voting.
Good thing.
So Alicia, were you going to cover item 6 or?
Yes, I am going to cover item 6. However, I did put it strategically on after the ranked choice voting decision so that I knew which dates to present.
Okay. Well, then we'll leave it as is and we'll go to ranked choice voting.
Okay, thanks.
Is there anybody presenting, or are we just using our knowledge from our last presentation?
That's a good question. I don't know if anyone's presenting.
I didn't have anybody lined up to present. I kind of threw this resolution together. I mean, I don't know what else to put forth, honestly. So I just kind of put this resolution together, and just in case you guys passed it, but Polly probably has more information.
Yeah, I haven't, I mean, having listened to these presentations over the last few years. I know kind of the general concept. I know that last year this was presented to you. Basically, ranked choice voting is a means of where the winner has to receive over 50% of the vote. And you know, it breaks it down. So if there are 5 people running for a position, it through a computer program, everyone ranks their first one, it goes through, and then it drops the lowest candidate. And then it goes back through and takes the people that had voted for that candidate and reallocates them to the other candidates. I don't know, Alicia, you're kind of the elections expert. Do you wanna, I mean, does people have specific questions? I wasn't prepared to present tonight,
Yeah.
but I do know generally about how it works. And I also know that at the end of the month, we have to decide by the end of the month.
I
I just
will
wanna
remind
remind-
everyone that when we looked at this previously, we decided it didn't make sense for Hideout because it's rare that we would have, at least to date, it's been rare that we would have 5 candidates for any given role. More often than not, we've got 1 candidate for a role, sometimes 2. So if you only have 2, then that's what you need anyway. So the question, and we're looking, the town has grown since the last time we looked at this. There's a lot more people. There's a lot more people eligible to vote. So the question becomes, how would the council like to think about recognizing that in the case of 3 or more persons for any given role, that we would want to use this process instead of just pure number of votes.
So Mayor, I just want to point out that the mayor's position and 2 council members are up for election. I'm one of them. Ralph, you're the other, right? We're up.
Well, I guess so.
Yeah, and
Yes.
Phil.
I'm not sure who else is
So,
up.
I'm up.
so mayor and 2 council members. So, if there were 3 people running for mayor, we'd be required to have a primary. Or if there are 5 people running for the 2 seats, right? Is that, Alicia, correct me if I'm wrong, but
Right.
we had 5 people running for the 2 seats, we'd be required to have a primary.
Correct.
And that primary would whittle it down to 4 people for the 2 seats and 2 people for mayor. I mean, I can't see how we're gonna have very many more than that, but it's possible. We could have that for either of those positions. And then the question is, and I think when Colleen Potter did this presentation 2 council meetings ago, so she did this presentation in February. You know, for a municipality of our size, running an election for a primary just to eliminate 1 person. And then, or if you're on the other side, if you're running for office, then you've got to mount possibly 2 campaigns. And we all know how much we love campaigning, right? I don't think anybody here likes to campaign, but this could become actually expensive for Hideout to have to run a primary. Should we get either of these positions, get it, the requisite number, at least. And then, so it would become more expensive for us. Plus, I really do think it's confusing for people. I don't know what kind of turnout you'd get from a primary in such a tiny place here. Ultimately, I think what we want to get is we want to get people elected who have the most support from the community. And I do feel like, putting aside the evident complexity of being able to put a number 1 or a 2 next to somebody's name, I do think we end up with a better outcome, especially in a small community like this, because it's cheaper to run an election. And then even if, you know, your first choice doesn't get elected, but your second choice might, so it feels like, it could be more representative of what the voters want if we were to move to ranked choice voting. That's my opinion. So it seems to me it has more positives than negatives. The only thing I don't understand, and maybe Alicia, you can help me here, if we were to choose to move to ranked choice voting, we did not get more than 2 people running for mayor and 4 people running for council. What would the ballots look like? Because, you know, we won't have to run a primary, right? We would just have a regular election in November. Would you still have to rank people, or is it simply, you know, the straight up vote like we're used to?
No, I believe that you'd still have to rank people, so you would do a 1 and a 2. Just, you know. I do want to add, and this may, I haven't received an interlocal agreement yet from Wasatch County, showing us the exact cost. But I have heard from other cities, that their per ballot cost is about anywhere from $225 per ballot to $275 per ballot. So you know, if we have 500 voters, you can do the math. You know,
Is that for either method, or I'm doing do the math right now? That's why I picked up my phone. I'm not
well,
texting.
so that's for the by mail method. So if we do have a primary, that's going to be, you know, double because we have a primary election. So,
Right.
you know, the cost would be double essentially. If we do ranked choice voting, it would just be the general election.
Does it cost any more to do one cycle of ranked choice voting than it does to do one cycle of traditional balloting?
Not to my knowledge. Like, so you're just saying if we ended up not having enough candidates file to warrant a primary election? Is that what I understand?
Yeah, I'm like, just my question is, do we have to pay extra for the software needed for the ranked choice calculating, or there's no like upcharge for that, or anything, any expense we should be taking into account? Do you know?
Yeah, not to my knowledge. Again, I haven't received the interlocal agreement from Wasatch County yet. But I don't think it would cost any more for the county to run a ranked choice voting election. So,
Okay.
I'm trying to remember because I know in Salt Lake County, it did cost, they charged a little bit more, but it was still cheaper than doing a primary plus a regular election. I was just trying to find their,
While you're looking, Polly, could I ask a question? I don't know what the final result was from the recent legislature. Are they going to allow just normal mail-in ballots, or do we have to go and present identification, or are we going to be required to use a voting booth?
that's a really good question. Polly, do you want me to take that, or do you want?
yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So that bill did not pass. Well, it did pass, but it was completely revamped from that. You are still okay to mail in a ballot. It's going to be kind of a tiered, basically it's not going to be required until 2029 that you provide your last 4 of social and last 4 driver's license or whatever they've decided. So yes, you will still be able to receive a by mail ballot. The big thing that changed this year is that the county clerk's office has to receive your ballot before 8:00 p.m. on election day. So where in previous years, we said you can have it postmarked before the day before the election, that is no longer. So you'll want to either drop it off in the ballot box before 8:00 p.m. on election day, or vote in person. So,
Or mail
Hideout
it in
will-
early.
sorry?
Or mail it in early.
Yes, mail it in early, but there's no guarantee that the post office, I had somebody in Fairfield, that said that the post office they take 2 weeks sometimes to deliver mail. So it's kind of iffy if you put it in the mail. But I think that we're okay. But there's just that's not the part that we can control, unfortunately. So that's why they changed that bill.
So will
Alicia, whether
Hideout continue to have a Dropbox?
We will continue to have a drop box outside 24/7, that's monitored by video camera, that will be open until 8 o'clock PM on election day. Yes.
Okay, great.
Yep. Thanks, Carol.
So Alicia, if, in the ranked choice voting, you might have multiple ballots, right?
No.
No, so
You use
go
the
ahead.
same ballot. I read that, that you might have, or you'd have to bring the ballot with you, because you don't know what the outcome is. And if you're traveling, like Bob and I travel a lot, and it's been a problem with the military, people that are not in town all the time. That's one knock against it, from what I understand. Can you share that with you?
Yeah. So the ranked choice voting wouldn't affect the deadlines for voting, or overseas military ballots. And actually they have given an exception in that bill, that military and overseas ballots, I believe, can be received after, but don't quote me on that. I have to thoroughly read it and process it. But I think that is the one exception, is if you're military overseas, that you can, your ballot has to be postmarked before the election, but can be received after 8 o'clock PM on election day. But that wouldn't be for ranked choice voting. That is just a decision on how you want to have your ballot appear and how you want to vote. So did that make sense? Or
it's a little hazy at that point as to what transpires, but I know at least some of the knocks, the cons on this, and that was one of them. Okay, we can move on from there.
I think the deadlines are still the same deadlines, right, Alicia? Ballots get sent out, whether they're ranked choice or traditional voting, they get sent out on exactly the same day, right? To people, there's no change there, so you should be receiving the ballot at the same time receive a non-ranked choice ballot.
that's
right,
correct.
Alicia?
That is correct. Yes.
At the same time period to get it filled out and dropped off or mailed in, we have with.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
My view is that, before we start making drastic changes to something as important as an election, I need to see some kind of massive education program for the voters. We may have a great understanding of this, may not be so good, but we at least have a grasp on it. The average voter, if we just spring this on them, I think there's a very real chance we're gonna have chaos. So absent some massive voter education program, I just can't get behind this.
Let me ask Alicia a question. Normally, is there any voter material available prior to the election, like a sample ballot or that sort of thing, generally available to voters?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not like a practice ballot or anything like that. I believe, if I recall correctly, Colleen, when she presented, she did state that what did she say? It was something like that they did do a practice run with a group of people and it was just fine. There will be instructions in the ballot envelope itself showing, and most people understood it. So, it's just simply a ranking system, 1 through 3, 5, whatever, how many candidates there are.
So I had the same concerns that I had last year, and that was only 5% of the 300 towns. And it's like 30, it's nothing, it's very small number. You know, and the other information I've read is it works better in bigger towns. Number two, in the past year, about a dozen states have totally exercised this entire process. They've just really written it out of even using it as a possibility within their states. So, and those were mostly red states. And guess what? We live in a red state. So I'm not sure really how, you know, with this low threshold, lack of education, and the fact that the trend by other states, particularly that are in this kind of milieu, so to speak, of politics, have already, you know, denied it. So I just don't see where this is going.
So Ralph, I can offer my reasoning why a quote unquote red state might not like it. Or it could be any state that's dominated by one of the two parties. Because I remember we at the municipal level, we are free from the party system. We're not in a party. We're just people being elected to represent and represent the
And
town.
I'm just indicating what the states did.
Right, but we're
Not
talking
what the
about us,
towns did.
right? Towns, because the state of Utah did enable this program to be piloted for a period of years. And maybe this is the last year. Trying to remember what, Colleen, I think it's a 5th year, right?
We actually extended it this legislative session.
They extended it, okay, so they extended it, so I guess they're, presumably their reasoning is it was popular enough to extend.
Or maybe not popular and they wanted to see where it was going. And that's my point.
Or maybe they need more data points and we would
Yeah.
help them be a data point, but my point is, I'm personally unconcerned about what other states have done. I just, and we are not partisan here, we're just people. And again, I think if you look purely economically and efficiency wise, it really makes the most sense. We do live in a community. I mean, I give our community members the benefit of the doubt that they're sharp. They're going to be able to understand the instructions on the ballot, and that I would hope there would be they would be able to they would be able to handle the instructions on the ballot. I mean, I actually don't see a downside to it. I'm not afraid of trying something different for this one election, and we can see how it goes and see if the program continues at the state level, and if we like it, we can agree in 2 more years to do it again. But unless we try it, we're not going to know.
So we've heard from Chris, Ralph, and Jonathan have all mentioned. So Carol, do you want to give us any thoughts you have before we try and figure out and Bob, if he can still hear us?
I mean, my comments or my questions were just about how we'd be voting. So it looks like we will be voting by mail. You know, that was my concern. I didn't see this working in a voting booth because it would take entirely too long. So that was my concern.
Hey, Bob, can you hear us? Are you still there?
Yeah. It's amazing what 100 extra feet of elevation can do. Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, man. Hey, you know, just my 2 cents on this. I think ranked choice voting, in theory, is actually a pretty good idea, and I'm sure we can work out the logistics of that. So I'd be in favor of moving in that direction.
All right. So I guess the question for the council is, this is kind of short notice. I know we've talked about it before. I would have thought we would have gotten this on the council meeting, at least with one more chance to get together again before we had to make that decision, but apparently we have to make that decision in the month of April. Is that correct?
Mayor, presentation 2 months ago, so we've had 2 months to think about it at the council level.
Okay,
This is not new.
I guess I'm thinking it was.
You might not have been there, I can't recall, but I have the minutes right in front of me from the
Yep.
February
Okay.
13th meeting.
All right, so if there's, I guess then the question I have, and Polly help me here, is if there's no more questions on the basic intent and process, I would poll, we going to either see if we have a motion to move this forward and vote or not, right?
Correct.
Okay. So the way this would work, as it normally would, is I need a motion and a second to consider the implementation, and then we would poll the council for a vote, and it would require four votes. I'm sorry, three supporting votes to move it forward. So so start with, is anyone willing to make a motion uh, bring the resolution forward to implement ranked choice voting for the 2025 municipal elections?
So moved.
Is that you, Chris?
Resolution in front of us, right? So
Yeah.
I motion to adopt the resolution to implement ranked choice voting for the 2025 municipal election.
That's what I just said, yeah. I just didn't hear if that was you saying you made the motion.
I so moved, Mayor.
Yeah, okay, thank you. You're sounding a little distant from the microphone. Anyone want to second that motion?
Yeah, I'll second that. This is Bob.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, then I will poll the council. Start with Ralph.
I'm gonna vote no for the reasons I gave, so stand on that.
Carol.
I'm voting no.
Okay. Jonathan.
No,
Bob
I'd vote yes.
and Chris.
Yes.
All right, so the motion has 3 noes, 2 yeses, so by definition, the motion does not carry. Unless I'm wrong, Polly, is that? the way
That's
I take it?
right. That's correct. And I think since the status quo is the regular election, I don't think you need to vote for that. That's what will go
Yep.
forward.
Okay. Okay. So, well, thank you for the discussion and the interest. I think there will come a time that this will be revisited, but this moment it's moving to the next possible usage before it comes back. Thank you. All right, Alicia, you got your wish. You want to talk about the filing deadlines and whatnot?
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to really quick, just put it out there. I will be putting a formal notice out before May 1st. But it sounds like since we are proceeding with the regular voting method for elections, the filing deadline will be June 2nd through 6th this year. The office will be open at those times, or you can call me at 435-640-2188 in order to make an appointment, and I will make sure that I'm at the town hall in order to receive your filing paperwork. 2 main things that have changed this year is that if you do go by a nickname, Bob, I'm gonna pick on you just because it's easy. So Bob, formal name is Robert. So your formal name will go on, you have to file with your formal name. Unless it's a common derivative, so Bob would be okay. Or like, let's say if, you know, Bob actually, his first name was actually Gerald, you know, then he would actually have to go and get 5 people in the community who knows him as Bob to sign an affidavit saying that they know him as Bob. They cannot be blood relatives or immediate family members. They have to be people in the community, and that has to accompany your paperwork to file. The other thing is that conflict of interest disclosures have to be completed and filed with the paperwork to file. If I don't have a complete document, I cannot accept the packet. So I will have those online prior to, because I know that some people have to look up, you know, if their daughter, you know, I don't know. There's many reasons that there could be a conflict of interest, but anyway, those will be public information. Those will be on the website for the time that until they're either voted out in the primary, voted out in the general, or if you win the election, then it will be on for your entire term, public on the website. So any questions about that?
I just want to jump in and just for clarification purposes, for those that are not familiar with the process and considering declaring themselves a candidate. That's what we're talking about, is if you have an interest in running for mayor or a council seat in November of 2025, you would need to bring that declaration of interest to the town hall, work through Alicia to between June 2nd and June 6th, I think you said, right?
Yes, correct.
So that's so if anybody who's thinking about running, that's how that works. And then Alicia will take you through all the detailed procedures, plus they'll be online.
Right. The information will be online, just because I don't want somebody to come in at 4:45 on the 6th and try to submit something and then say, oh my gosh, I don't know my financial information, and or what my conflict of interests are, or need to go get those affidavits from their neighbors saying that they know them as Bob. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I just wanted to put that out there, that did change during the legislative session this year.
So if your name is Joseph Robert Nadelberg and you go by Bob, you would have to file by using the first name Joseph, unless you had that affidavit filled out.
Correct. Yep.
And then nobody would know who you were, because everybody knows you as Bob.
Yep, exactly.
That's just helping Alicia with her explanation there.
Thank you.
So I have a question about how is this information going to get out to the general residents of Hideout? I mean, we are a very small group right now of council people and mayor. If somebody at large wants to run for one of the offices, how are they going to find out this information other than having to look on our website?
Well, I think it's gonna be all over KPCW, for example. There'll be lots of articles about upcoming deadlines and filings, et cetera. So I think you'll see it there. It'll be on the,
We have
people are watching television news, they'll see that. I don't know, it's how people
we
get
have we
their.
have 3 mechanisms for communicating with the community. We have a website, we have an app, which pushes, and we have a newsletter, which is also a push. So those are the 3 places that this information will be published. I don't know what else to do, Carol, if our community isn't aware of our website, our app, and doesn't pay bills. because of, they're potentially renting. They could be, they're registered, but they're renting, and so they don't see the water bill. I don't know how to do that, Carol. I don't know what else to do.
Okay, I just was curious, that's all. I
And
mean,
it's a great question. I don't, but I
right,
don't
I
know
mean,
what else
Park
to do.
City has the park record, they have KPCW, it gets out there because it's, a community that reaches out. But, I don't know how many people look at the newsletter or, go to the website. Hopefully they do, or they'll come into the office and ask, so.
Yeah, so once again, I do need to legally publish it. So it does need to be before May 1st. So it does need to be on the public notice website, our website, just like Mayor said. I am open to doing extra that wouldn't cost, I don't want to spend funds to send out a mailing or anything like that. But, if there's something that you think of, I'm happy to explore those options.
I do think, Alicia, we should use our 3 standard mechanisms as a minimum. Well, 4,
Absolutely.
including the public notice website, but yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Any other questions?
And I think the other important statement to make is clear that if you don't declare your interest in this June 2nd to June 6th window, you eliminate yourself other than, I guess, a write-in campaign. Is that correct, Alicia?
That's correct. And I believe that the write-in filing deadline isn't until September. So you have quite a ways to file as a write-in, but just know that your name will not appear on the ballot.
Okay. So if you're really interested, and that includes incumbents planning to run again. Okay. If there's nothing else there, we're going to go on to item 7. I hope this should go reasonably quickly, given that we do this every year, but let's pop it up and remind everybody that this is probably tied very closely to our fire committee and so forth. We do live in a wildland urban interface, and by state law, we can't just decree this every year forever in perpetuity. We have to have this resolution reviewed each year annually by council, agreeing to restrict fireworks for the calendar year 2025.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. I don't have much to add. Cameron put this together. He puts it together for us every year, but it's the same as we've done in years past, and I think it's very important to do it in order to make sure that we can have no fireworks in the summer months when our fire season is high.
All right, I'm ready to vote for this. So everybody else,
Yeah.
anybody else? Okay, we're ready here in the room to move on
Okay, so
this.
let's get a motion, please, to consider a motion to adopt a resolution prohibiting fireworks within the town of Hideout for the 2025 calendar year.
So moved.
That was
Second.
Jonathan, I think, for the motion.
Oh, that was
That was Bob. Okay.
Or otherwise known as Robert.
Okay.
yeah, that was Robert.
Okay. Second,
Chris
I'll
is second. I already did.
I have Chris as the second. All right, Carol.
Yes,
Okay. Ralph,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Chris.
Yes,
Okay. Motion carries unanimously. Fireworks are again banned inside the town limits of the town of Hideout. Okay. Item 8, Polly, do you,
Yeah, I can go over this quickly. I helped draft this. These were just some items in our fee schedule that we kept putting off. I think actually since like the last 6 months, since last October, some of them just kept getting bounced month to month to update our fee schedule. So this would repeal and replace our fee schedule. And it's I have the summary in the resolution. It reorganizes the fee schedule slightly, adds land disturbance permits and bond amounts for work in the right of way, and remove weed abatement fees and roadway construction fees.
Paul, just a quick question on the removal of the fire sprinkler review inspection. I know that no longer required by state law that fire sprinkler system. Oh, you can answer this one, Kathleen?
Is it okay if I answer?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, the reason, and that was my suggestion to pull it out of the fee schedule. Those inspections where a property does have a fire suppression system, it's inspected by the fire district.
Okay,
So
not by us.
the town's never done those inspections, at least in my background.
Okay,
So
great.
it just seemed not
So why
necessary,
charge for it?
right? Or even have it in
Or
our
have
fee
it on the
schedule.
schedule? Okay. How does somebody who's getting a permit, building permit, trying to get to CO, they know the fire district has to come in?
They have a
Checklist?
permit with the fire district.
Okay.
So that before they can close out their fire district permit, they need to finalize all their inspections.
Okay, thank you.
And we did that on my house, so I've been through it.
You've been through it, all right.
I have as well.
Excavation fee that was removed because why?
It's a new section. What we're doing now at Gordon's suggestion, we used to just have kind of one fee schedule that captured everything. So our wish is to move forward so that we have land disturbance separate from right of way. And where it makes sense, and I don't know if Gordon's still on the line, that we would have a bond collected just to make sure that the applicant does what they're supposed to do to complete their permit. So we're taking Gordon's background there.
Yeah, I totally support this. I mean, we've had issues with guys moving dirt on their property. And we haven't been very good about how we control that because it's not an excavation. If they're moving dirt, they're not digging footings and foundations where there is a permit. And so we get, we have dust issues and so forth. So I think this is a great idea to move this to a separate permit. So I think it's great.
Is that enough? Just the excavation permit, is that enough? And
I think Gordon's on. We followed another city that he's worked in before, and we sort of followed the fees that worked in another Utah city.
Okay.
Gordon, if you're with us, would you mind just giving a few words on that?
Yeah, I am. The question was, is it enough? Are you talking about the amount that's there?
No, we're not talking about the finances. We're talking about, will a permit require us to help us to require people that are disturbing land to do the right thing as promised?
And is that permit enough? Is that the question?
Yeah, right. Not the cost of the permit, but does the permit give us the power to squeeze them to get the job done?
You have
say what, Chris?
Is this amount in the fee and rate schedule enough money for us to encourage or obtain the outcomes we want when it comes to the excavation or land disturbance?
I need to, let me zoom in on those. Because the land disturbance permit, I didn't review these. Let's see.
And I
Oh,
don't mean
yeah,
to.
yeah. So the fees are for processing, and then the bond is unique. It says as calculated under engineering review. Let's see, wait a second.
There you go.
Well, that's in the roadway.
Yeah, sorry. I don't see where the bond is
So I wasn't,
outside
you
the
know, I
ROW.
handed this to Kathleen some time ago, and I don't, the way it was designed when I provided it was that the bond for earthwork on private property was site specific. It was dependent upon the magnitude, and there's no substitute for that. Every site is unique, and that just requires judgment on the part of the town engineer. But the
Here it is.
underlying principle is that the town engineer needs to exercise some judgment to say, is what they're doing here going to end up being a liability to the land if they don't follow through? And if the answer to that is yeah, then there's a bond put in place to remedy whatever they plan to do if they leave it midstream in the job undone. So that's where, to answer your question, is it enough? Yes, if the town engineer is reviewing it carefully enough to understand the magnitude of what's being done.
So Kathleen, we got some language on this page here in the excavation permit fees, land disturbance stuff, where we have a specific cost for right-of-way stuff. It's not clear to me that we're saying a bond should be assessed at each of these, or at least the opportunity for a bond should be assessed. It just looks to me like it's $1,825 for 10 acres.
Yeah, so I think what this is just fees for processing the permit. I think the bond, the power to collect a bond is on the permit itself. So it's not necessarily a fee schedule issue.
Okay, so that's what we're trying to get clarity on.
Did that make sense, Council Member Byer? That was a long answer to get to where we were.
No, you answered my question perfectly, Gordon. I understand now the difference between the fees and the bonds, and that the bonds are on a case-by-case basis, depending on the nature of the public improvements. Repair
Well,
of
not
the public.
public. So on private property, this
Right.
bond that we're talking about, well, so we're talking about two different bonds.
Okay.
If they're working in the right of way, then it's the scope of work is, well, it's the same principle, but we're protecting a little bit different groups of people. Whenever they're working in the right of way, the bond is very simple. They're going to be disturbing and destroying improvements in the right of way, pavement and whatever, to get to whatever they're doing. And we want to have enough money set aside that if they leave the job, that we're able to button it up. So that's if they work in the right of way. Outside of the right of way, on private property, if they conduct some sort of mass grading, and they have huge mountain of soil, and then they go bankrupt, and then there's this huge mountain of soil that ends up being a liability to the parcel, and nobody will buy it, and then it ends up being a blight. That's where the town engineer needs to have some foresight and say, no, Mr. Applicant, you need to have a bond in place to protect that from happening.
100% behind
Yeah,
that.
and just to add to that, we'll have two new applications. And both applications will have a line for the bond as calculated by the town engineer.
Great.
So,
Okay, good. Thanks. You answered my questions.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right, so let's go back to where we were.
The only changes, right?
Let's
It's only
see.
red that I see.
the roadway fee is coming out.
Oh, there's not.
Sorry, I'm going back to the resolution for the fee and rate schedule. All right,
Oh, the road construction piece coming out, you said. Kathleen, okay. Right. It looks good to me. I mean, you answered all my questions. I support it. Okay.
me as well. Anyone else have questions on this modification? Okay, then I need a motion to adopt a resolution repealing and replacing the fee schedule to reorganize, add land disturbance permits and bond amounts for work in the right of way, and remove the weed abatement fees and roadway construction fees.
Yeah, I'll move on that.
Thank you, Bob. You want to second that?
Chris, I'll second it.
Thank you, Chris. Okay. Ralph?
Yes.
Yes, you support it. Okay. Jonathan,
Yes,
Carol,
Yes,
Chris,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes,
thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. We're going to move on to item 9. Jonathan, this is something that I think you brought forward. Do you want to start by talking a little bit about this?
sure, I'd be delighted. So, starting out as background, I have very high regard for every member on this council. Everybody donates their time, everybody prepares, everybody gives their best efforts. And we have a very diverse group here, which I think is very valuable because that produces diverse kind of perspectives. So what I wanted to do with this is merely codify a process by which interested members of the council could, if they so choose, get a confidential briefing in a manner compliant with law regarding certain matters. And those certain matters are essentially things that might or could potentially cause or lead to an unbudgeted expense of $40,000 or more. You know, for example, something happens, our lift station blows up or burns down, something of that nature, and others, or which might or could reasonably result in litigation by or against the town, and updates to those matters. And all I wanted to do here is just kind of codify a process by which members of the council could request and receive, again, confidential briefings in a manner consistent with law.
Why can't we get those now? Without this codification? Are we not getting it? What's the root cause? Are we not getting information? Is that why you're putting this
Well,
forward, or?
I kind of like the codification of a process, so it's formal, so everybody understands how they get it. Everybody understands, what their responsibilities are. We can, sometimes you can do things informally, sometimes you can't, but having a process that's been formalized, I think just kind of makes things go smoother.
So I'd suggest that we do have a process. We have a couple processes. Okay. One is in case of emergency. Okay. There is language where two types of emergencies. If something truly needs to be health and safety oriented, the mayor has the right to declare that emergency and start doing things to ensure the health and safety of the community. The other is that we have the ability to call an emergency meeting because we need to take action quickly, and we reach out, and as long as we can and work hard to get a quorum as quickly as possible to cover that. The third part of the process is that any council member, we have staff who bring content to the council for review. And that staff, we review those here like we have tonight on a number of issues. And if any council member says, I really need to learn more, I'd like to either see this tabled or I'd like more information, when we've done that several times, staff goes back, gathers additional information and brings it forward. So I don't know what is missing in our existing processes that that keep any member of council from knowing what's going on. I also know that we have executive and legislative arms of our government on purpose. And what I get concerned when I look at this is we have employees who have a line of reporting, which is eventually the buck stops with me. Council members obviously get staff reports, get reviews at council meetings, just like we have tonight on the purchase of trucks, for example. But that comes through that process and not through individual conversations with multiple council members. These guys need a single line of communication and a single boss. And I see this as a potential risk to having staff members getting varying inputs and then calling and saying, what do I do? Because this guy asked for this person asked for that. What do I do? And and eventually, I don't know, results in confusion on the members of staff and or impacts the way they spend their time. So I don't know that we need this process, but I'm happy to bring it to the council. If the council is interested in bringing this forward, then we'll bring it forward and vote on it. That's my 2 cents.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'm just saying that's my 2 cents worth, but by all means, council, ask your questions.
I'm still trying to understand what problem this is solving. If you could articulate, Jonathan, the problem that this is trying to address. I mean, I see you've written very carefully, very thoughtfully, an ordinance language here, but I don't know if you've got any use cases that it's spurring you on to do this. Because I do share with what the mayor said, and I do think it is confusing to the staff if they've got too many bosses, and that's not our job either. And the legislative side, we're here to make a policy, and I know this is policy that you're trying to make, but I also worry. I know that the staff, there's very little staff. They have multiple competing priorities. And is your intent with this to try to control their priorities or their direction or what they're working on? Or is this intent simply to have more of either one-way or two-way communication? If you could try to explain what it is you're going for, if it's that two-way back and forth, or is it simply more information coming to the council, and then this is the method that you're thinking is the best way to do that? Can you just explain that?
Since you've asked, it can be difficult to get information on sensitive matters. And that creates a problem because it deprives the town of the very diverse and I think highly valuable expertise of the council members. And so the goal here is for interested members of the council to get a detailed confidential briefing. That briefing can be presented by administration in a number of ways. They could pick a point person. That person gathers all the information and comes to a briefing. This does not compel administration to bring 5 members to a briefing. It just requires information sharing. And through information sharing, you get different perspectives. And each member of this council brings a different perspective. We may not always agree, but I personally value the opinions and perspectives of people in this council. And I think there's a lot to be gained by having more people weigh in with perspectives than fewer, given the diverse expertise that we have. So the problem that I'm seeking to solve is greater sharing of information on sensitive matters where members of the council might be able to contribute an idea that might otherwise not be found.
A sensitive matter. Can you just, I'm sorry, Mayor, I'm just gonna ask you more questions because I'm trying to understand. Is a sensitive matter a personnel matter? Is a sensitive matter a litigation matter? Is a sensitive matter? I mean, what is it? Is
Yeah.
sensitive? What is that?
I'm worried
Can
about
you-
that language as well, because, there's an OPMA for a purpose. There are only certain things that we're allowed to discuss in executive. And so the concerns that Jonathan, you're raising seems to me that if they're not executive meeting topics, then we should be having those discussions in the open meeting.
Well, let me point to a couple of examples, if you will. The first would be litigation or potential litigation or threatened litigation. I don't think that we want to discuss that in a public forum.
That's
I
right.
would
But they're protected by the executive session that the council
Right.
can go into.
I would respectfully call your attention to section C, which says council member briefings. Obviously, you couldn't do more than 2 at a time because we don't want to run foul, but it says council member briefings shall be conducted in an informal but confidential manner and shall comply with all applicable laws, including but not limited to the Open Meetings Act. And it goes on to say such briefings shall be conducted so as to maintain the confidentiality as may be recommended by the town attorney. And so there is no risk under this language of running afoul of the Open Meetings Act because it expressly says we shall comply with the Open Meetings Act.
Let me just, okay. I'm glad that you recognize that in here. That's good. You said one thing earlier. You respect the diverse backgrounds, ability to contribute of the current council. What about the next council? We're gonna have a new council in January. Are you assuming you're going to respect whomever gets elected, regardless of their background or their agenda, if you will? You're writing an ordinance that makes it codifies that any one of us can demand a briefing from any staff member. Is that what this says?
No, that is not what it says.
From whom?
So the administration must supply the briefing. The administration gets to choose who supplies the briefing, so long as that person brings all the requested information. That could be, for example, it could be the mayor himself or herself. It could be the administrator. It could be a member of the staff who's fully informed. It really doesn't matter, so long as that person comes to the briefing with all the requested information. It does not dictate, that you got to bring every member of the staff. It does not dictate that you have to bring more than one member.
I don't see how this, if the topics are the topics we talked about that get talked about in executive, and we value input of the total council, then we should be talking about this in executive, these items in executive with the whole council there and not an individual within the council. I mean, it's important that everybody get the same information and ideally at the same time.
Well, not every matter can be discussed in a closed session. There are strict limits to what can be discussed in a closed session.
Agreed.
So,
And therefore, the stuff that
this
can
is a
be
good
done
idea.
in an open session should be done in open.
Yeah, can you, could you just give us a use case where, not closed session, but something you don't want to do in an open meeting, but you do want, and not it, you know, is there a particular use case, or is this just leaving it open for any matter that, any council member can demand a briefing, and that town administration, and I'm putting that in quotes, has to comply with? How will they be able to comply with, as you mentioned, long as the person has all the information? It's like, I feel like this is way too broad and open-ended. I'm going to say, I'd like to know more about what's going on. I mean, I have a lot of questions. Fortunately can't keep going to Daniel, because I'm like, I want to know what's going to happen with our infrastructure, and I'm kind of waiting for that. And I just started trying to, ask Gordon with engineering, because I have questions about that. But I don't want to necessarily be demanding that they provide information, maybe drop everything to provide information, maybe take them away from some other work they should be doing. Maybe I'm costing the town a lot of money, because what I'm demanding information on is one of our contractors who's hourly, paid by the hour. I mean, it could cost us financially, and it can cost us just productivity wise, by being able to just demand a briefing, who might be, and the mayor already mentioned this, who could be taking them away from other work that they're supposed to be doing. And I can tell I'm making you frustrated, because as much as I do support getting more information, like I'd really like to know more about what everyone does and what they're working on and how we're doing and all that. But I trust our staff and our hires, that they know their job, they're going to do their jobs, from, on the administrative side, and that we've got a structure in place where, there's supervision and escalation and, performance reviews and things like that, that are going to help keep things moving as smoothly as possible here. I worry about the breadth of this, the fact that, yeah, we have 5 great council members right now. We don't know who we're gonna have in January. And I really, personally, as much as I would like the information, I really don't want to get in the way of the operations.
You don't have to ask if you don't want to.
But I don't want.
We publish, sorry,
able
Chris,
to-
finish up your thought.
I'm sorry, let me just respond to that, and then I'll turn the floor over to you. But I don't want you or anybody, just because I want to be respectful of their time, I don't want to give you carte blanche to take, I don't know how many hours a week from whomever, and I don't know what you'll do there, because there are no limits here. If there was some, maybe more guardrails around this, I could be more supportive, if you could figure out a way to do that. But there are no limits here.
Well, I disagree. You look at section B, there clearly are limits.
Explain them. Go ahead and explain them.
Well, if you look at section B, this section talks about the matters that are potentially subject to briefings. Things that might or could potentially cause or lead to an unbudgeted expense of the town of $40,000 or more. That's one basis. A second basis is those matters which might or could potentially result in litigation by or against the town. It does not leave this wide open as you're suggesting. It limits these things to those two matters and of course updates.
Just let me respond. Number two, sorry, Mayor, I'm not yielding the floor yet. Anything could result in litigation because anyone, and you can sue anyone for anything, regardless of how. I mean, we know this from experience, real world experience. So I don't know how you can say for certain that might or could potentially result in litigation. It's like, whoa, anybody can sue me tomorrow for anything, whether I did it or not. They can still sue me, and that's way too open-ended for me. The other one, the unbudgeted expense that could, there's a risk. Maybe there could be an unbudgeted expense. I don't know,
There is a process for unbudgeted expense.
Thanks, Phil. It's just, like I said, it's just too open-ended. If you could try to make it more bound, time bound, really topic bound, something, then I would feel better about this. Right now, it's just, like I said, this leaves it open to anybody in the council. And a briefing, what is a briefing? Is a briefing a memo? Is a briefing an hour meeting? Is a briefing 6 hours with 5 people in the office who are now scrambling around to get you the information you're demanding? What is the definition of that? And again, it's just too broad for me to feel good about this. If you could somehow narrow it, so I could feel comfortable, confident that maybe I don't want to ask, maybe I don't want to disturb people with their heads down trying to get the town business accomplished. But I'm not giving you carte blanche or anyone else carte blanche to just go in there and, ask for briefing after briefing after briefing.
Now you're suggesting that council members might be abusive.
Yes, thank you, abusive.
I take umbrage
That's a
with that.
perfect word for it. What can you write in here? What could you write in here that could guard against abuse? That's what I'm looking, thank you for giving me the right word.
My pleasure.
I would suggest that we do have processes. Okay, if they need to be adjusted, let's talk about adjusting them. We do have reports that go out that the staff issues. To be fair, we've been a little bit delinquent on our engineering reports from where we were, although Gordon has issued several since he's been here. We can certainly, if there's a desire, we can do more on communication around those things. 2, I'm not here to, I don't believe our role is to make decisions based on whether or not there's potential for litigation. Our role is to protect the citizens of the community. If in our efforts to do that, if that results in threatened or actual litigation, then so be it. I mean, our job is not to say, oh, well, let's think about that because we might get sued. Our job is to say what's right for the town, what's right for the standards, what's right for the people. And so I don't want to have the thought of whether or not we get sued in front of that. In front of a decision. That's not why we're making decisions. We're making decisions for the best performance of the community. So again, I don't get to vote on this. You guys do, but I see this as unnecessary. We have processes. Given where we were when I first came into the role in my first sitting as mayor, we've come a long, long way. And I see this as unnecessary, extraordinary, not needed. But that's my opinion. So I also know that if we're going to start wordsmithing it, I think that should be done offline. We're already 2.5 hours into this evening's meeting, but if you're comfortable with the language, Jonathan, you brought it forward. I'm happy to see if we've got a motion to bring it forward for vote.
I will make that motion to bring it forward as is, and then a vote by the council.
I'll second. And I can give plenty of reasons. I think you're missing some of the points here. You can't, so I'm just gonna second it. You want to have a conversation offline, I'm glad to have them.
Okay, so we've got a second to bring it to vote. So
Are we through with discussion?
There was
no,
a
no,
motion.
Carol, by all means, go ahead.
But
You haven't
can't
spoken.
speak, so
I
I
will,
think we're
I
on
will
board.
withdraw, I'll withdraw the motion. If Carol has something to say, I want to hear what she has to say.
I
I do
didn't say anything, we're here for Bob, so I'll chime in, but Carol, please.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not sure if I totally understand Jonathan's purpose of this, but one of the things that as we're discussing this, I'm thinking that maybe what he's asking for, and maybe I'm way off on this, but that maybe there's a little bit more transparency coming from staff or other entities about things that are going on in Hideout. I get a lot of questions from my neighbors and people I know, people in my book club that want to know what's going on in town. And I think that they don't really have a lot of information available. I mean, yes, we have a website, but some of the examples are, Jordanelle State Park, what's going on with the pass, what's going on with the fencing, what's going on with Elkhorn Springs, what's going on with the study that was done about the wildlife crossing, what's happening with the possible recreation clubhouse for Shoreline 4. I mean, those are the kind of questions that I get from members in the community. And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know where people find that out. So I don't know if that's what Jonathan is going for, or if he's just talking about litigation. So, but those are some of my concerns about transparency from the staff as to what's really happening. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Well, Carol, I think those are great topics and great thoughts. We do have a newsletter, and we should be, those things, when you're hearing those, should be going to Carol Custerly so we can get something out on those topics.
Okay.
Or we can try and be more proactive and just add more topics to the communications. I'm fine with that. We have we're paying professional communications people to help us here. So
right.
let's put it on them.
So who contacts Carol Custerly? Is it the people who have the questions, or is it the council person that they ask?
Well, I think that's a great topic for us to sit down and say, what's the best way to do that? Again, we have professional communications people who work for communities. They can tell us what other communities use to put their information together and share that out. I think that's fine. I'm perfectly supportive of us doing a better job there. I've been after that for quite some time, and I'm still feeling that we're quite deficient in that area. I support what you just said. So let us do some work on that, independent of what happens here.
Okay, thank you, Phil.
If there are no more comments, I would renew my motion seeking a vote.
Can I jump in?
Please do.
Yeah, maybe Bob did.
It is, Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is all very familiar in my industry. In aviation, we call this crew resource management. And the gist of it is that you want all your crew members to be well informed because everybody is going to contribute something. And yes, there at the end of the day, there is only one captain, and that's the final decision maker. But I'm in favor of this concept as well, and I think we should move forward.
The concept and as it's written, Bob?
Yeah,
Did you read?
I'm good with it.
Well, I just add, in my view, I don't like legislating good process communications. And I don't think it comes from necessarily the town staff at all. So I think we've had existential issues in the town that are serious critical issues. And sometimes it takes a month to get a reasonable response. I'm not even, that's not being critical of the town administrative staff. I'd say that goes right to the heart of our own, the senior members of the leadership. And I'd have to say, I deal with probably 250 executives, C-level executives a year. I get better response from a CEO and a CXO of a major corporation. And they'll call me back within usually 48 hours. I don't have to, berate them. I don't have to ask. And these are people who are making probably well over 7 figures a year.
Look.
So Chris, can I say?
I'll tell you what,
something?
Ralph, if I were making 7 figures, I'd call you back faster.
Okay, right. That's funny.
Well,
There's
Phil,
not
you don't
enough,
always call us back. Excuse me, Chris.
there's
I'm
not enough
talking.
in here, though.
Excuse me, can I finish my thought?
You're talking about a 7-figure briefing and then you're offended because you're not getting a call back from somebody here, but you get it from your,
Because I'm putting in a lot of time. My
you're also
time,
getting paid a lot.
my time
You're
is
all getting
very
paid.
valuable. And I expect everybody else's time, including yours, to be valuable.
It is valuable.
So to get
Just as
this,
valuable.
by not being answered within a certain period
The
of
staff
time.
member's time is just as valuable.
I agree, and I'm not talking about the staff members.
So who are you going after? Your ordinance here doesn't specify that. Are you saying you want a briefing from the mayor and from the town administrator?
Maybe our
Or are
town
you
attorney can answer
saying-
questions.
Well, be specific in here then and explain what a briefing is. I'm asking you to go back and put more detail in here. This is far too broad and not,
I don't think we'll abuse it.
I do not. I
I'm
cannot feel
I'm not
that.
an abuser of
You-
our staff
I
or
don't know if
anyone.
you've heard, I think I've said this 4 times now, we're going to have a different council in January. And you
Well,
are,
let's hope we have a good one.
well, let's hope, but
Yeah.
we don't know what we're getting.
So that means you. can't
Clearly, we don't
pass
have one now.
ordinance. So, you're gonna
I'm
stop
saying
your
that This is
legislation
not
because
written
you don't know
well
who's
enough.
gonna be in the office in
I'm
January.
saying this is not written well enough, with enough specificity.
So
It says here,
what do you suggest?
I suggest you put town attorney, mayor, engineer, whatever it is that's got the bee in your bonnet right now, and specify the briefing and a briefing within 2 weeks, within 10 days, within an hour and a half. What is it?
That's in there.
Where is that? I don't see that. Where is it in there? A briefing. I see a briefing without being defined. What's a briefing?
Such, if I could call your attention to section C, the second to last line says such briefings shall be conducted within 7 calendar days of a request by a sitting town council member.
What
It's
if
in there.
somebody's on vacation? What if they,
We'll excuse them, of course, Chris.
this, such means shall
Does
be
every-
conducted? That means they
Right,
must.
hey,
Excuse me, there's a reason for the shall, and that is the inboxes of various town officials here are filled with emails from myself and Ralph asking for information and they go ignored.
So you
And
guys
so,
are
excuse
having
me,
a
excuse me,
over being.
I let you talk, now it's my turn, okay? And so now, this isn't designed to provide a tool by which council members can get answers to these types of questions. And I understand you don't like that, and that's fine. You've said your piece, I've said mine, I would like to vote.
Yeah, I just want to add, Chris, this is not.
I'm offering you an opportunity to make some wordsmithing changes here now, but it sounds like you don't want to. It's my way or the highway for you on this. You're voting for this as is right now, which it sounds like might even pass because you all already showed your hand. But what I'm asking for is a little more thought and refinement in this ordinance to really try to get at the root cause of what is bothering you so much. I don't think it's there as it's written.
We'll have to agree respectfully to disagree.
I would like to ask Polly to weigh in on this because there are language in here that concerns me from a legal standpoint, and I'd like her input.
Yeah, so, the tension between the legislative branch and the executive branch is one that we see in a lot of municipalities. The concept of having council ask questions is one that can make it hard for staff to perform their other duties. I've looked through Jonathan's proposal and listening to the discussion here, and at least I have some suggestions that we should think about. One thing is that I think it's problematic if you just have one council member getting briefings without letting other council members know about those briefings and or having the opportunity to also have briefings. That's part of the problem. Ideally, and this doesn't talk about this, but having the most ideal is to have this happen in an open session, as was touched on. And that's, the truest form to the Open Public Meetings Act. But obviously, there are some things that are more sensitive or maybe more minutia. That maybe you don't want to wait until you have that for that timeline. But that should be the top priority, is to try to have it in an open public meeting. You may want to, so I think you need to have something in here saying that briefings should occur in groups of 1 or 2 council members to make it clear, unless it occur a part of a regular or special council meeting. You should make it so that the mayor and all council members have that opportunity to know what's going on. So it's not, so that it's uniform for the whole council, so that you don't have one council doing this without letting others know that they're also asking for it. I think you need to have one point person to who the request for briefings would go to, whether that be the mayor or town administrator, so that so that there's some ability to delegate this. And you may consider that you could ask for this with the concurrence of one other member, similar to when you have a special meeting. And also maybe you want to put something in here saying, the briefings shall not utilize more than 10 hours of staff time per month, or whatever amount you think is sufficient. But you're going to have issues if, staff has to do this, is spending 10 hours a week here, 10 hours a week there, and they're not able to perform their other duties. And there's also a typo in the last word.
So those sound like common sense modifications to here. So are you willing, do you have any willingness to consider any of the things? I mean, Polly's smarter than me, but do you have any willingness to consider any of that in here? And make some language changes, put some parameters in place as probably just suggested. That was very common sense for me. I would feel much better about that, about this, if we had enough, like I call them guardrails, but constraints, rules of engagement, whatever they are that need to be in here. So it's not so open-ended.
So this is not something that's just launched out of the blue sky. I have 11 and a half years of experience writing legislation for the state of Illinois. I put a lot of thought into this. I put a lot of effort into this. It is closely and narrowly tailored to solve what I perceive to be a serious problem with communications. So at this point in time, I'm not.
One other thing was it was mentioned earlier that the scope of the request was tailored, but I don't see that because it says on any matters of official town business, including but not limited to, and then it lists the three things and or update, and they're as broad as updates on ongoing issues. So if your intent is to limit the scope of what can be asked for briefings, I think that what's written here is a little broad.
The request for briefings must fall into categories 1 or 2 and or 3.
No, it says, well, then you need to edit that because it says, shall provide one or more briefings on any matters of official town business, including but not limited to matters. So including but not limited to means to me that anything. Any town, official town business. So if you mean to limit it to those three things, then I would suggest that you state that and take out the including but not limited. Say on matters that, and then you can list those three things.
Look, if you're trying to railroad this through as it's written, you may have the votes tonight. But if you're trying to do the kind of job I hope you're trying to do, which is to do the right thing for the town, and that the spirit of what you're trying to do here is noble, then you will consider doing some refinement to this and bringing forward perhaps some of the alterations that have been suggested to make it even better and to accomplish your goal that I think what your goal is. And then, you know, if you would like to try to get more broad buy-in, if you're looking for unanimous support from the council, then you'll be willing to make some changes that I don't actually think makes it better. And you could argue your whole premise of I value everybody's input and, you know, you all have good variety of backgrounds and, you know, you have valid things to say, then put your money where your mouth is and, you know, consider the input you're getting tonight and try to incorporate it as such in here so that it can be, I'm going to say, acceptable to a broader than the apparent 3 votes you might have as written tonight.
Well, on the other hand, we could keep it broad and then look at what the fine tuning could be later on. And right now, if it's 10 hours, we've not measured anything. So how do we even know that's a realistic number? So keeping it broad gives us some latitude, or gives Jonathan in his proposal some latitude. Again, legislating communication is always difficult. And I think, this is a stat that, from what I can see, is good common sense. And we should be adhering to this. So I'm not really sure why all the commotion there.
You just heard it, because it's very broad, and I'm gonna call it invasive from the legislative body to the administrative.
Well, on that point, let me quote the United States Supreme Court. The power to conduct investigations is inherent in the legislative process. That power is broad. It encompasses inquiries concerning the administration of existing laws as well as proposed and possibly needed statutes. That's Watkins v. United States. In fact, the scope of the power of inquiry is as penetrating and as far-reaching as the potential power to enact and appropriate. That's Baron Blatt versus United States. That is because without information, the legislative branch would be shooting in the dark, unable to legislate wisely or effectively. And that's Trump v. Mazars. So it would appear the United States Supreme Court disagrees with you.
Yeah, Jonathan, come on. We're trying to have a conversation here. Now you're going into you're getting out the club. If you don't want to have a conversation, you've heard it. We don't like it the way it's written. You're unwilling. It's my way or the highway. You're not moving. What you said at the beginning, you're actually going against. So you're disingenuous at the beginning. So I don't know what to say.
I think
I don't know what to say. I've said my piece. I've listened to Polly. Polly has some very common sense changes to make here. She is our town attorney. She's giving us the advice that this is overly broad as it is. Normally, we listen to her advice when we're adopting an ordinance. And that's where we're at.
In my view, we're going around in circles here. So I renew my motion that I had previously to call this for a vote, as is.
I'll second.
Okay, Chris. Sorry.
Sorry, I hear what was the motion?
The motion, I'm happy to repeat it.
Please.
The motion is to adopt the proposed legislation on town council briefings as is. It's been
Ralph?
seconded.
Yeah, I seconded it.
Thank you. Chris,
No.
Carol,
No.
Bob,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Jonathan. Okay.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-2. Okay, item 6, gonna finish up the meeting here tonight. Public input. The floor is open for anyone in the public to speak on any topic. The way you do that is a raise your hand functionality in Zoom, which is on your toolbar on Zoom. I'm not seeing any hands. So I am closing public input. Item 7, committee updates. I don't see Thomas with us tonight. And I don't know that there's anyone.
I saw him on earlier. He's the 609 number.
Oh,
I think. I know he has a. I'll text him.
well, we'll skip that and come back to that. Let's do design review committee. That's him again, sorry. EDC, Ralph?
Yeah, the updates there that, last week we walked through some of the budgets around, Elkhorn. Or the pro forma, what we'd get out of it, so to speak, looking certainly, taking a closer look at the sales tax revenue primarily. And, there's more to share on that, but, to some extent, given that the reproposal was doubling the size of the residential, and it still kept actually the same commercial, which was 18,000, with no guarantee that 6,000 would be, that after the first 6,000 square feet, there'd be any additional, and then they were phased in 2 years. So I think really what we need to do, and I'd like to do this, is talk to Nate, Mr. Brockbank, and understand where he sits in terms of exactly that, because the town would be, literally doubling the size of his original proposal with the way I read it, some limitations on the commercial. And whether we need the commercial there or not is another thing. We might be able to take the value of that commercial and put it into another area, like Ross Creek. So those are the discussions that need to be had. Javier and Scott, the two gentlemen who are proposing kind of the open air restaurant, we'll be talking to them soon. I think you know that is Jan on. She should certainly get congratulated for winning the proposal from MAG for potentially using money. And I can't remember Dan and the other gentleman we met with, but it looks like they've approved it, or tentatively approved it. So that's all good in terms of taking that money for a study. And let's see what else. There are probably a couple of other things. I'll stop there and see if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ralph. Chris, post.
The post committee has been doing a lot of talking over the winter. Now we're about to roll up our sleeves and get dirty. So Jordanelle State Park Trails update. There's a project that's in progress. I don't know if anybody's been down to the park lately, but there's a brand new perimeter connector trail. It's 10 feet wide. It's really nice. I rode my bike on it the other day, and that was going to be a road base, I think, added to that. So there's going to be a potential volunteer day to help with that project. Plus there's a trail maintenance day. We have a bunch of trail work to do down there. And I do want to say that the improvements that were made in that portion of the project have been great, because I noticed the water is now, the culverts are there, the water is channeling properly and nothing's flooding except for the area where we need a bridge, and that is coming up next. So there's a lot of actual progress made, and I want to again thank Kathleen for working with us to secure a grant. And we have two grants that are paying for this. So we are actually demonstrating the ability to deliver projects for the Trails Committee. And I know a lot of people don't like to do meetings. They would rather be there with a shovel, getting dirty, and that's coming up soon. The next thing is part of our grant is, well, actually I have to make an announcement. For a while, we were talking about the Hideout local Jordanelle State Park passes. After years, it feels like of having that on the table to talk about, that is now off the table. We are not going to be having any local Jordanelle State Park passes. There will be no ability to go through the fence at any point in Hideout to get into the park. All park users are going to have to go through the Ross Creek Park entrance. So there's no cutting the fence, there's no jumping the fence. There's no, hope anymore, that we're gonna be able to have the ability for town residents to get into the park more directly. They're going to have to go to the park entrance. So there are various federal agency conflicts there and staff layoffs. Thank you, federal government and state government, for that. And we've decided that we're no longer going to pursue that. So we started talking about an alternative, and that was to be repairing the fence, especially in front of Shoreline. So we're going to be meeting more about that on Tuesday in our regular meeting. Carol, of course, you're invited. I know you've got some feedback on that. We've gotten some fencing possible designs from Thomas, but we need to talk a little bit more about that, find out the costs, but we're going to be able to pay for some portion of that fencing replacement between the grants that we have, plus the fence repairs that the developers who damaged them owe us. So we're expecting to have funds to fix the fence and change the fence. The other one is the spine trail. That's been in our general plan addendum, the post plan, for a long time. That is one of our dreams, is to have a active transportation trail that's going to go through Hideout, get people off of the high-speed highways, State Road 248, onto their own paved trail. So we are still working with Nancy over at MAG on potential opportunities to partner with UDOT and funding. And we also, the last thing is we have a goal on the committee to get our bike route established this year. So that would be painted sharrows and bike route signs that would be up and available prior to the big event that comes through town. That's our goal anyway, and that's the Summit Challenge that I presume is being held as usual in August. It's the big fundraiser bike ride. We had some transportation updates, but I'm going to turn that over to Carol to talk about it. Carol, if you're ready for that.
Sure.
Sorry. Thomas had his hand up and I missed that. He may be,
Oh.
I wanted to talk about something that Ralph said. If not, Thomas, I'll put your updates at the end.
Hi, Mayor. I think I was hitting star 6 and star 9 a number of times, so I just was ready when you are to discuss the Planning Commission and Design Review Committee.
All
But
right,
if
we'll
others
let
issues,
Carol
go ahead.
finish up, and then we'll jump back up to you. Okay, go ahead, Carol. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. In transportation, I think everybody is probably aware of the fact that the express buses to the ski resorts are no longer running. They stopped running on this past Sunday. As far as updates go, there's a lot of new things that are going on. Both Park City and High Valley Transit are looking at a number of new possibilities. I know that High Valley Transit is focusing on Highway 224. Highway 248 is kind of in limbo right now. They're still not done with the ski season. And I will just keep following what's going on with transportation and keep the council apprised of it. So that's basically what I have to say about transportation.
Thank you. Questions for Carol?
Pardon?
So I was asking if anyone from council had a question
Oh,
for you.
right. Thank you. Oh. Okay, let's go to Thomas.
Yep. Thomas, go ahead. Thanks.
Hi there. So with regard to the Planning Commission, what we will have on the meeting for April 17th is the Wild Horse development, which is a proposal for a rezone to neighborhood mixed use for a commercial component, as well as a conditional use for cluster development for the residential component of that site. We'll also have some engineering standard, engineering and specification standards revisions, as well as potentially shoreline phase 4 and tentatively Elkhorn Springs. Shoreline Phase 4 and Elkhorn Springs are tentative, but they are on the public notice for that meeting.
Okay. Anything else?
That is it.
Okay. Questions for Thomas?
Yeah, Thomas, so the stuff that from planning commission that will not come to council would be shoreline phase 4, right? With our new law. And then,
Well, I think that actually Shoreline Phase 4 is currently falling under the prior subdivision review. So that may, right now, as the application has been submitted, that would come before you because that application came in before the state law changed. So that would come before the town council.
okay. And then Wild Horse is a zoning change that would come to us eventually, right?
That's right. That would be a recommendation by planning commission to town council for review and adoption.
Okay. Is there anything on the planning commission upcoming agenda that would not be coming to council eventually, should it make it through?
No, actually, even the town engineering, the engineering standard revisions, those are ordinance. So those would also come to town council. So everything, Wild Horse rezoning, shoreline subdivision, because it was proposed prior to the new year, the changes, as well as the engineering standards would come before the town council.
Okay, thank you.
But not Elkhorn Springs?
Elkhorn Springs is tentatively on. They have, we're in discussions with them right now. They're asking for a potential special meeting or a hearing before the planning commission in May. We've tentatively noticed them for April 17th, but I suspect they will be on the May agenda. That also is a rezone request, and that would also come before the town council.
Okay.
I was gonna ask you if you have you sent me a report on the wildlife movement. And there might be impacts on that. Is that ready to be discussed, or is the final report not out?
Oh, back to the post committee then. Yeah, the post committee, we're having a special meeting tomorrow to look at this wildlife vehicle collision report. I sent it to Ralph in a draft format because there is an economic impact stated in there, and I thought he'd be interested in it, of the cost of the collisions in Hideout along the 248 corridor. We have most of the members of the post committee are meeting tomorrow at 3:30 just to go over this report, because it's in draft form and we have a deadline of Tuesday, the 15th to send our feedback. However, our regular meeting is Tuesday afternoon at 4 and we didn't think we'd meet the deadline. Plus, we've got plenty of other things, as you heard in my report, to deal with during that meeting. So we're having a special meeting tomorrow for feedback. So that report is out there. It's very interesting. We're gonna have a good session on it tomorrow, I think, to talk about. But it is not finalized yet, so it hasn't been officially issued. It's just gone out to those of us who have participated in its, been stakeholders in it so far.
Okay, so maybe that'll be up next time.
Yeah.
Before we close out, Polly, I propose that we add that the discussion in closed session on land acquisition.
Yep, we can have closed. That's what I was anticipating.
All right.
I would ask that we have a 10-minute break between the end of the meeting and closed session. Can we do that?
Yeah. So what we have to do is get a motion to move to executive. If we have topics, it sounds like we have topics.
Motion.
Before we do that, I just want to say I'm going to need somebody else to run executive. I'm up against my witching hour, so I won't be on it.
Do you think we should have executive in a special session that we would notice maybe during a better hour where it's not so late? Is there a possibility of doing that? I mean, we can go into executive.
We did that, the last time. I thought that was a good idea, but hey, we move things around. But Mayor, I'd love to have you on the session because I think it's a discussion for all the council people and yourself.
Well, I understand that, Ralph, but unfortunately I have a conflict that's going to keep me from staying on any later than 9 o'clock
Okay.
tonight. So
Understand, totally.
I don't want to keep you from moving forward because there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, and you know what a lot of it is anyway, just expressing some of that. So, that's fine. Good luck, Phil.
Are you gonna run executive? Who's gonna run executive? Do I have to run executive? If so, I need 10 minutes to get home. And
Yeah, you should, you're the mayor pro tem, so that would be the appropriate person to run, unless you can't be present.
No, I can be present. I just need 10 minutes.
Okay, so I need a motion to close the public meeting and move to executive to discuss pending and reasonably imminent litigation, personnel matters, deployment of security personnel, devices or systems, and or sale acquisition of real property, i.e. land, as needed, to resume at 9:15 p.m.
I
So
so
moved.
10 minutes. Can we make it 9:20, please?
9:20, okay, 9:20 p.m. Who's the
So
motion?
moved.
Was that Carol? I'll second, or
yes,
Bob?
yes, I moved.
Okay, Ralph second. Okay. Ralph,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jonathan.
Yes,
Okay, Ralph. Sorry, I mean Chris, sorry.
Yes.
And Carol.
Yes.
Okay, I think I got everybody.
Yep.
Okay, thank you all. And I'll catch up with what was discussed with Polly at a later time.
Have a good night, Phil.
Good night.
All
Can
right.
I ever see you in 20 minutes?